The chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay. It's the only way to start your day. It's the 10th day of August 2020, and Nduoko is in the house. Good morning, Ndu.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
I'm fine.
Fantastic.
How was your weekend?
Fine, thank you.
Right?
Now that everything is in staccato.
Good to see you, Nduoko.
Same here.
We should sound excited, right?
Right.
Okay.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was wonderful.
Oh, good.
Lazy. Nothing done. City Muga, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
How was your weekend?
Fine.
Right. What did you do
Not much. That's
that you'd
the whole
like to
point.
share?
Not much. I hardly did very much. That's the whole point of having a weekend.
So that you can laze around.
Yeah, the idea is not to sort of like push yourself to the end so that you come Monday, you're so exhausted you can't even think. No.
Okay. I hear
I
you.
did a lot of reading.
That's a lot.
Yes.
When you say not much and then you say a lot.
Yeah, a lot of reading
Choose.
isn't much, really.
Choose.
That's pleasure reading. I wasn't sitting for an exam.
Yeah.
It wasn't a stressful endeavor. That's why I'm saying not much. Much usually means, did I do something adventurous? Did I do something... reading is exciting for me, but there it is. You know, one of the things about weekends is that they seem to be longer than they normally are. Why am I saying they seem to be longer? Because weekends in a previous time in my life were full of activities. Now, the activities have been limited. Well, by choice, of course, but they've been limited. And this great need to meet people, of course, has been dampened by COVID. And even when you do meet, the conversations are, well, should we say they are not as, not invigorating, but they don't sort of like keep lasting as... It's like you know that there's a time schedule you must follow. You understand by such a time you need to have finished talking, you need to go. Again, this is just a fallback from the past when time just seems to, well, there was an unending aspect to time. Now that unending time to aspect has gone. There is a very distinct and clear period within which you must do certain things. So the weekends tend to be, as I said, a replica. One weekend's a replica of
the other.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a weekend is just a good time to relax, unwind, catch up with family. And that's one of the things that is really good about this period and this season. Many people are ending up spending time with their families as opposed to, going out to meet so-and-so and coming back in the wee hours of 2 days later, So let's start the show where we always begin. But also remember, today we're going to be discussing a number of things. One, we'll be talking about a happiness index. Apparently, the people of Makueni County are the happiest in this country. We'll understand why. Followed closely by the people of West Pokot. Now, look at Makueni, look at West Pokot, and then you want to tell me that there's something that you can see that would make both those be among the happiest people in the country? I don't know, but we'll be talking to a company that conducted the research, and this is InfoTrack Research, and they'll be telling us exactly what kind of questions they were asking and what kind of answers they got. So they came to that deduction that the people of Makueni and West Pokot are among the happiest people in the country. And then also there's the issue of Kazi Mtaani and Pesa kwa Vijana. We will be speaking to the Principal Secretary in the State Department in charge of this Kazi Mtaani whole program to understand why are youth complaining that they are not getting money, and why are some complaining that they have not even gotten the opportunity. But let's begin the show where we always begin. Fellow Kenyans, in the last 24 hours, speaking from Kisumu.
The world actually now is at 20 million cases. 20,024,263. That's the number of positive cases for COVID-19 on the globe. If we look specifically at Kenya now, over the last 24 hours, 4,420 tests were carried out. 599 new positive cases as of yesterday. Total number of cases now stands at 26,426. And that is what Kenya is looking at the moment. If we heard over the last couple of days that, there's been a rush for the whole lemon, ginger, honey mixture. And then I think there have been renewed calls by especially Dr. Moth from the Ministry of Health saying that, whereas these are good immunity boosters, good for fighting, the basics that everybody needs to follow right now are still wearing your mask, maintaining good levels of hygiene and social distancing. Those are the ABCs of COVID-19 from what we see so far. People are now rushing to consume this, and then of course the price of these has gone up, and there's a frenzy, as there was initially with chloroquine, and then there was with bitter lemon and other things. But now still staying with the basics is what we're all being encouraged to do. And unfortunately, we still have some people in the United States who have then begun to ingest sanitizer and were poisoned and had to be hospitalized because once again President Trump talked about sanitizer. And if it's good on the outside, it could be good on the inside. Unfortunately, it is not. So some people had to be hospitalized because of that. Other fantastic things happening around the world.
How many people?
There was one particular state where 5 people had to be hospitalized because of sanitizer poisoning. So that made the news, of course.
If you were to believe the stories around the so-called Wild Wild West in America, people who went around from county, country, town to town selling their wares. There was a brand of physician who sold a certain brand of medication called snake oil.
Yes.
Snake oil, by its very nature, was supposed to be Mwarubaini. Yes. There was hardly anything it could not cure.
Right.
Where I'm going with this is President Trump would have made an excellent snake oil salesman had he lived in that particular era.
Oh, yes.
People seem to gobble up whatever this man says for some reason. And if we're talking about the United States, literally. If we're talking about the United States, 5 million now, 199,444 cases is what they're dealing with 165,617 deaths. Brazil still continuing to rack it up there with now 3,035,582 cases. And Russia still coming after India is still not, their cases don't seem to be flying off the handle as they were. They've seen a reduction over the last couple of weeks. South Africa, again, also seen a significant reduction in the number of cases that they report on a daily basis, now with 559,859 cases, and unfortunately 10,408 deaths. About 1,000 deaths between Thursday and today is what South Africa has realized. But still, that, they don't seem to see the health sector being heavily burdened. Let's take a quick look at New Zealand, where in the last 100 days they've not recognized a domestic case of COVID. Any cases have been that they have been from those who've come out of the country for whatever reason. And so the death toll remains at 22 and the caseload remains at 1,569. So they're probably going to a place again whereby they would be able to announce, sooner that once again they are COVID-free.
Of interest when you're talking about COVID, South Africa has actually been producing ventilators. They have a plant in Cape Town that, if I'm to go by what I read, they are able to produce, I think, the equivalent of 1,000 a day.
1,000 ventilators a day.
Ventilators. They're producing ventilators. They're producing ventilators. And they work and they've been tested and they're supplying it. You see, why this is important is this. They are not just looking at the problem from the perspective of let's do what everybody else is doing. They're saying, what capacity do we have to actually do more? If there's a problem with ventilators and you can't get them, and this was a problem from the very beginning, why don't you then simply just ensure that you manufacture them?
You manufacture them. And and also your local medics get to test them and approve them.
Yes.
Similar conversation has been had in the country. And I remember among the things that the doctors were saying is that, first of all, before we actually get excited, let's allow those in the medical profession to look at what has been produced and see whether it works and whether it actually serves the purpose. Because there are also very many Kenyans. Remember, there are even JKUAT and other universities and other institutions that have come up to make ventilators. Our only issue is when it comes to such purchases, then the money people come in. And if it's not them that are going to supply this, then it's never going to fly. That's our only problem. Look at our ventilators, look at our PPEs, until the moment that a particular institution is aligned to a particular individual or corporation or interest, theirs will never even get a KEBS approval.
So essentially, we kill our own innovation even before it becomes the light of day.
Yep. We basically come up with all those reasons why, this thing needs to be checked, it needs to be approved, it needs to go through KEBS, and then it goes to KEBS, and KEBS say, we have very many that we are looking at, so just join the queue, my friend. So just wait. So in all that time, somebody else gets the deal, somebody else gets contracted to supply, and you are left out in the cold, and others are importing. Because you see, there is an immediate demand. Problems.
The fact that there's a demand doesn't mean that the innovations cannot continue. Because if you import, it's to simply forestall and ensure that there's no gap.
Yeah.
But if we then produce, it means that gap will never rise again.
Yeah.
Because we have it in-house. The two don't need to be exclusively diversified.
Yeah.
No, they can work in tandem.
They can work in tandem.
Yes, but in our setup, they don't. One dies.
In our setup, it is meant to kill one because you want to ensure that this one, unless they come and align with you so that you know that you'll be getting a shilling out of everyone that they supply, then you will never support it. And that's our problem.
Isn't it just our problem, my friend?
We have the same issue. I mean, we talk about ventilators. Ventilators, Kenyans have come up with ways of making ventilators cheaply, locally, not done. PPEs, we came up with ways of making the PPEs. I mean, there was a huge issue about it, and that's why we ended up with some big companies supplying PPEs and big institutions doing PPEs. All right, and then we went also into the mobile technology. The issue of contact tracing, as you can see now, that's being reported on a daily basis, is that we are having a problem with contact tracing. The Chinese, 1 billion people, could contact trace. But we, 47 million, cannot contact trace. And yet we say that we have technology. We have over half of our population has access to mobile devices.
You know what is truly interesting, Eric? At the very beginning, contact tracing was actually very successful.
Yep.
It was.
It's the truth, it was. I know of cases that have been told, or people who thought that they had sort of like gone round the curfew, come Nairobi, gone back. You'd be traced.
Yep. Because at that point, I think we're just dealing with a few people with the small resources that we have. Police and their equipment for contact tracing. The same police are trying to contact trace somebody who has robbed someone and stolen a vehicle.
A chicken.
Chicken.
They will find you.
But the contact tracing is not as complicated as some people want to make it sound.
It really isn't.
It isn't. That's why it's called contact tracing.
It really isn't.
You so and so, who are you with? It's really, and it's not even, doesn't have to be even expensive.
We spoke to Cherotich the other day, and she told us about, she knew where she was on a particular day, which would have been the only day when she came into contact with anybody else. She, by virtue of the fact that she picked up her phone and called each and every individual that she was with, there's contact tracing by one individual who's able to say, I've gotten sick.
Guys,
right? Guys, be careful or be ready. Go get tested. This is one individual who's able to do it and speak to other people. So you can imagine then an agency which then has the machinery to be able to do this, and you have a wide network of people. How much more would you then be able to do? One individual can do it. Come on. It's not a matter of cannot. It's a matter of will not.
Yeah, it's a will not. It's a will not. Apple and Google have come up with something that can be used on mobile phones. We just need to attach our own apps that will work with that.
You know, Apple and Google are the ones, they're well known, better known, but other people have come up with similar apps.
Yep.
Tracing people is not difficult. In all honesty.
It's something that's very, very much doable in this country. You just need to know. I mean, this is where you are and this is who you came into contact with. And those people are just alerted automatically. 16 minutes after 6, this is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Shortly, we'll be looking at the big headlines of the weekend and how the week is going to look like. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Monday morning, let's see what the skies look like. In Nairobi, we are looking at 13 degrees and cloudy conditions for most parts of the day. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 18. And in Nyeri, also cloudy conditions at 13 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 17. Let's skip on over and see what's happening in Kisumu. Highs of 26 and lows of 18. Partly cloudy conditions and a chance of rain later on from what we've been able to see previously. All right. In other parts of the country, in Kakamega, we will have wet conditions in the afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 18. Malindi, if we look at the coastal towns, 26 degrees a high, partly cloudy conditions at the moment. The chance of a sprinkle here, as we'll see in Mombasa. We'll take a look at that in a while. Step out of Kenya and in Kampala, partly cloudy conditions at 18 degrees. Chance of a sprinkle as well. Highs of 26 and lows of 15. In Dar es Salaam, we'll see highs of 32 today and partly cloudy conditions, mostly sunny conditions, however, in the afternoon. In Johannesburg, 6 degrees and a crisp cool morning, highs of 17 and lows of 4, and partly cloudy conditions throughout the day. It's overcast in Lagos. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 25 and a chance for showers later on. We're looking at still warm summer months in Europe and in New York. We will see highs of 34 and lows of 22 when the sun does come up later. We'll take a look at how weather conditions might change in a little bit.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Live streaming on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. As we begin a look at the big stories of the day, let's start with the big proverb of the day.
Well, let's start the big proverb of the day with an African proverb. A wise man never knows all, Only fools know everything. Let me repeat it. A wise man never knows all. Only fools know everything.
Okay.
Okay.
Fools are wajua. So those ones are now wajua. So we are saying any mjuaji is a fool.
Wow.
Let's put it this way.
Mjuaji, what is it called? Kimenyi, what else?
We this is one of those situations where it is subject to all manner of interpretations.
Yep.
And there is no interpretation that will be wrong. No. Take your pick.
Okay. Okay. That's a good one. Let's take a look at the big headlines. Where do you want to start?
Well,
At the top.
okay.
Okay.
Shall we or shall we not? Okay, let's dive in. Ruto fights to pay for Western land. Deputy President asks the court to terminate the case by the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority seeking to recover the land on which Western Hotel is built. The National Land Commission ruled last year that the land is public and hotel owners should compensate the agency for the loss. All right, so if you look at the details of the story, according to Western Hotel lawyer Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, it is the contention of the second respondent that the procedure and process are mandatory, and this honourable court is lawfully obliged to order the petitioner to finalise and or pursue the process and procedure to the end. So, Western is built on land, according to the agency, that is public, and there should be compensation made by the hotel owners back to the public. Now, Deputy President William Ruto wants a state agency to abandon its quest to recover the land on which the Western Hotel stands and instead accept payment for the land. He argues that the KCAA, that's the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, should conclude negotiations for compensation as ordered by the National Land Commission instead of pursuing a fresh case seeking to repossess the land. The new filing by Western Limited, which was done a few days to the July 29th hearing date, is a departure from the hotel's initial defense that it was the legitimate owner of the property and that a directive is to compensate the government amounted to unjust enrichment of the state agency. So previously there was a case that, it was previously the stand was, look, this is public land. Now the stand is, let's pay you for the land and let's forget about this whole mess, essentially.
Well, if you want to take that argument to its logical conclusion, you remember that hoo-ha about Ngong Forest land? Well, if this were to go that direction, it would set a precedent, would it not?
It would.
And the truth of the matter is, do you tell the owner of the land what to do with his land? Do you dictate to the owner of the land what to do with his land?
Yeah, because if they don't want to sell it, you can't force them, no?
The first issue is who's the owner of the land?
Is it public land? Or was it private land that was then up for sale?
By the way, public land up for sale? Is public land really ever sold?
This is the contention.
How?
How?
There has to be some accession and allocation that is clearly documented.
It's a legal process. It's not really sold. It's public land. Okay, let me ask a question. For instance, can you sell the stadium?
As who?
As public.
To who?
You know that's public land. Or can you go and sell Jivanji Gardens or Uhuru Park?
No.
The best you can do is allocate it.
I think the issue here is, which is where I think the spotlight should be shone on the National Land Commission, which gets to a point where it looks at the issue, it finds it's contentious, it says, all right, so ukweli ni kwamba this land belongs to the KCAA. However, because there's already somebody on the land, let's regularize this acquisition of this land by this somebody. Is that the right way to go?
You know, the truth of the matter is this. That land wasn't there just for the heck of it. Remember, we have an airport right across the road. Okay?
Yep.
Literally. When these lands are allocated for these functions, they are not, planners don't think in terms of 2-3 years. They think even 30-50 years ahead. And say, if we have this here, the likelihood of us needing to expand, needing to do this may arise. So let us make provision for it. That is why you will find that public entities, like, say, that authority, has land. It's for that same reason that the one entity that had most land in this country was railway. You know why? They preceded. They were there before everybody else understood these matters of land.
And it's interesting because then this didn't just pop out of the woodwork. This has been going on for a very long time. If you look at the timeline of events, 2001, the Commissioner of Lands, Sami Moita, allocated KCCA 2 plots, right? In August of the same year, Transport PS Francis Mathaura wrote to his lands colleague Nehemiah Ngenyo to safeguard the plot. In 2002, in October, the Director of Civil Aviation relocates its stores from the Western Land. In 2003, in January, Transport PS Sami Kyungu wrote to the Lands Minister Francis Bayer complaining that a private developer had fenced off the plot. In 2003, F. Samara, an officer in charge of air navigation services at Wilson Airport, claims a private developer had started construction. In 2005, KCAA writes to the Commissioner of Police, Hussein Ali, seeking his assistance to evict unidentified third parties from the disputed land. In 2005, David Kimayo replies on behalf of Ali, urging KCAA to move to court first. In 2008, KCAA again seeks to repossess the land. In 2009, KCAA Chief Ground Operations Officer Peter Munyao writes to the KAA Managing Director asking for comments about the proposed Western Hotel. And then in 2010, the KCEA writes again to the KACC seeking help to recover the Langata land. In 2018, a case is filed before the National Lands Commission seeking to recover the land. And in 2019, Western files its response. And in January of 2019, the Lands Commission finds the hotel is on public land. They find, since 2001, in 2019, they find that this hotel is on public land, but orders Western to pay in order to regularize the process.
What is interesting is the period between 2001 and 2003. Mid 2001, the land is allocated to KCAA. This is mid 2001. All right. Before we even think about anything, the following year, October 2002, KCAA relocates its stores from this land. This is October. By January, a private developer has fenced off this land. Mid 2001, January 2003. Land has been allocated to KCAA and private developer has fenced off the piece of land. It tells you that from 2001, it was long game.
Let me ask the question. Whose land was it before it was allocated to... you know why I'm asking? You know there's a prison somewhere there? There's also a school somewhere there.
It was public land.
Which means it was school land.
For the Commissioner of Lands to be able to allocate the 2 plots, basically it's public land. And then he says, all right, because of this and the other, we are going to allocate this to the KCAA. They can put up their equipment, their air navigation equipment, all their stores, or whatever they need to do with it.
You know, this issue of public land was, and still is going to be a problem. You know, for the longest time, schools and public institutions did not have title deeds in their name. It was just land, public land. So it was subject to the sort of allocation that you're talking about. And it was open to all manner of abusers, such as the ones that we have witnessed. Yes,
it's very, very clear. I think for me, the clear issue here is by the time Sami Waita was allocating these KCAA 2 plots, there was already a plan in place. You, KCAA, we're going to allocate this for you, and then you shall move, and that's it.
And the rest shall follow.
Yeah, the rest shall follow. So that by the time that Francis Mathaura is writing to this lands colleague and says, all right, so this one has been allocated to us, please safeguard it for us. In October of 2002, the Directorate of Civil Aviation relocates its stores from this particular land. Basically, they were there. From Kitambo, it shows that DCA was already in this particular piece of land, but it was not in their name. It was just public land.
It was, yes, same as other government.
Same as other. So they just wanted it to be officially, this belongs to.
It, you know, prior to that, even 2003, in an earlier time, this is something that was very common. I remember I lived in Mombasa prior to that in the 1900s. And there were two schools that almost one lost their land. One was Loreto Convent Primary School. It lost land, somewhere in Kizingo. Again allocated. School land, playground.
And there's a school already there.
It was school ground. It was school ground, fenced off.
Yep.
Somebody just came and hived it off.
Yep.
Then there was Tower of the Sea. This one I knew because I taught there. They had a playground which was opposite the Aga Khan Hospital. Somebody decided to take it. Now, again, there was a very forward-looking headmistress. She passed away sometimes earlier this year. Lady by the name of Mrs. Osuna. The children decided to demonstrate. And that particular location came to an abrupt end. Now, if somebody can decide to allocate for themselves school playing grounds,
Yep.
what about some empty fields?
What is an empty field?
I mean,
This
nobody's
issue of
going to do anything
school,
on
empty
it.
school ground. Oh, that's
There's nothing like empty school ground.
that's a
as
case in
such.
Ruaraka.
Yes, precisely.
The entire fiasco about the Ruaraka land is because there's a school. This school has been here for long. And then a gentleman comes and says, but guys, I have the title deed for this. I have owned this piece of land forever. And there's a back and forth. And it's a land in this country is a big issue. Like when we spoke to the PS for crop production, Professor Boga, remember he was saying land is a spiritual issue in Kenya.
You know, he put it really well. Because it actually is, if you think about it, the way we treat land and the way we look at land.
Yeah. It's a spiritual issue. It's a big one. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then we continue looking at other big stories of the day.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, it's Monday morning. Everybody a little bit slow to wake up to traffic today, but we hope that doesn't get too crazy as the sun does come up. All right, let's look at Thika Road. It's actually moving very smoothly today. We know that for the past 2 days, a certain part of Thika Road has been closed. That's officially open, so it shouldn't cause any traffic today. Getting off of Thika Road into the CBD and outbound also should be a walk in the park. Looking at the other side where there actually is a park, Mombasa Road, it doesn't look too terrible right now. Coming from Mlolongo and heading then towards the SGR and then towards the JKIA turn off. A little bit of traffic here and there, but it shouldn't be too crazy. We'll take a look at that in a short while. Getting into the CBD, coming off Langata Road, coming off Gong Road, Bagathi Way, coming off of Uhuru Highway, from Mombasa Road and all the way to Westlands. Moving very well at this point. Let's take a look at what it looks like in about half an hour and see how we can keep things moving this Monday morning. You get stuck somewhere or you have an alternate route that folks can use, let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
We are
Nairobi.
looking at the big stories of the day as covered in the national newspapers. What do you have, CT?
There's something interesting here. State House tops talks on revenue.
Right.
It's one of these stories that you read and you wonder, okay, well, this is what it says. The plan was 40 lawmakers were supposed to meet in a hotel in Kiambu to sort of like off the books hash this matter of the stalemate of revenue sharing that has dogged the Senate for the longest time. Now, to spice up the story, there was roast goat meat and the accompaniments.
Kukuwa na shoma.
There's gotta
Yes, and people were geared to attend. And then, the convener, majority whip, a gentleman by the name of Irungu Kangata, unfortunately had to bring this anticipated meeting to a grinding halt because, according to the papers, and I'm reading this from The Nation, a powerful government official called Mr. Irungu Kangata and scuttled the meeting, leaving him clutching at straws. Actually, this one, they shouldn't use the word straws because what he's clutching at is lots of goat meat, okay, and the accompaniments.
And a bill to pay.
Chances are the bill had already been paid for.
So the issue is, nani atakula nyama if you don't want us to meet?
The question I'm wondering is, who is this powerful person who can call a majority whip and tell him, my friend, we are aware you have called a meeting, we are aware these people are going, Nani, forget it.
Forget it. Just leave it. Leave it. A further read into that story, however, shows you, one, many of the people who had confirmed attendance, this among the 40 people who had confirmed attendance, are people who are already thinking in one way.
Yes.
They are pushing the one man, one vote agenda. All right? Those that are pushing the other one tree, whatever agenda, had not confirmed attendance to this meeting. So it was going to be a choir's meeting just to do choir practice.
Choir practice is good. You know,
There's no way they were not going to hash out and reach consensus because they all think the same way.
You see, consensus may mean, folks, I know we think this way.
Can we change?
Yes. It provides that opportunity. You know, the thing is, a full belly is a very good structure from which you start thinking.
The unfortunate bit, however, is if, for example, this meeting had leaked to the media from the other side, it could easily have been painted in the wrong way.
Or it would have gone south.
Yeah. You see, these guys are still digging in, despite the fact that we have agreed that we are going to form a team from the Senate that's going to be led by the leadership of the Senate to hash out this matter. These guys from Mount Kenya, and that's how it was going to be painted, are still digging in. They are still saying that they want to insist on their position. So I think whoever it is who called this meeting, according to that paper, whoever it is that called me this meeting was well advised.
Probably,
to just call and say, you know what, guys, look at it this way.
The optics are not good.
Yeah, the optics are not good. And then number two, you have also invited the Speaker of the Senate. Surely, that already creates a wedge. That shows that this man is going to be partisan.
And he's not supposed to be.
And he's not supposed to be.
You know, when you consider that it could very well have been a meeting to tone down certain positions that people had taken, the optics, I think, that would have been difficult to go around.
Yeah.
Because had it been picked up, as you said, by the other side, they were not going to paint it in any balanced way. No.
They're not going to say, at least Kangata is calling these people to tone them down. It would have been, you see? See?
They're at it again.
They're at it.
Now they're meeting.
They even want to scuttle our own other meeting.
Bus. Politics, and then some.
I think Irungu Kangata is going to find a very, very difficult time. This next 2 years, if he retains this position, until the end of his term. My goodness. So here, first of all, you have not been able to marshal the troops to vote for one formula. Secondly, every attempt you're making is being questioned, even by your own seniors, superiors. Then there's a BBI issue that's going to come. And you've already talked about the BBI and said our position on the BBI is going to be determined by...
problems.
Yeah, the new leadership of the Senate. As a majority and a whip.
But what I like about this particular discussion is this. It has actually become a national discourse. So that things that you may not have known about matters regarding or relating to financing the devolved system, at least a little more or a lot more than was previously known is now in the public domain. That's number one. Yeah. Number two, it's opened it up for discussion at every possible level. Because everything, and this one, my hats off to our colleagues in the media because they have ensured that the public gets to know every little move about this.
Yeah.
The thing, though, that has not been brought to the fore, and this one I must emphasize, is every time this discussion takes place, it takes place from this perspective that there are those who were marginalized, and apparently, even with devolution, they have remained marginalized. And that what is being touted and being put forward will just guarantee that they'll continue being marginalized. This is a false narrative. It's an extremely false narrative.
It's
Yeah.
not true.
It's a false narrative.
Also, what we are discussing now is not the CRA formula, but some changes proposed by the Finance Committee of the Senate. And here I also need to fault the CRA itself, because the CRA itself is not coming out clearly and doing a whole media blitz of explaining its thinking and its original formula,
No, they are not.
and why the original formula was how it came about, how they came about their own original formula.
Maybe, Eric, they understand your thinking and it's long game.
It's long game for them.
They figured, this one, let's not talk now. Let the politicians do their talking.
And then we'll come
And then
in.
we will come and explain actually our thinking behind this. And also remember, who knows their thinking except them?
Right, and it could be that when they do land that particular plane, it would be then the only option that anybody then would be able to select. Because all this time, nobody's been able to make this decision. So you come in and say, actually, you know what, we were thinking, this is it. And it will probably be everybody looking at each other and saying, all right, well, you know what, probably is the one that we should then go with.
You know, I'm back on this issue of marginalization. When people talk of marginalization, they talk about issues that happened in 1963 and thereafter. The other thing that is not discussed is this marginalization that we speak of. What brought it about? When the northeastern provinces of Kenya talk about marginalization, you have to ask the question and there has to be an answer. Why did that happen? What was happening at that particular point in time? Remember, people wanted to secede. They were of the idea, we need to move back into Somali. Problems arose, marginalization. Then, the western part of the country, there are people who decided this multipartyism can work for them. And they will tell you they were marginalized. The coast will tell you it started off with a 10-mile strip with the Sultan of Zanzibar. When we got independence, it's not as though anything changed. We were still marginalized. All that may very well be true. But in 2020, 7 years, even prior to this century, something very interesting happened. We started multipartyism. When we got to this century, we started talking of a new constitution. We actually got it. So the issue that we're talking about, at least from a legal perspective, had changed fundamentally because the constitution had ensured.
Yep.
Devolution cannot be devolution until it was implemented, and that's a constitutional issue. How then do you still talk about marginalization as though it happened yesterday? And yet, we have a constitution that has been seeking to right that wrong or those wrongs.
The issue here is the implementation of that constitution. And any move that appears to be going against the spirit of that constitution.
Which spirit? Spirit according to whom?
Spirit according to everybody.
Spirit according to everybody, which means that everybody has been marginalized.
Yes.
So,
Spirit according to everybody in this way, City, in that the constitution, and in understanding the fact that there was an imbalance in development, there was an imbalance in terms of focus by the national government, by government, there needed to be some righting of those wrongs, right? So the spirit was that you are going to introduce devolution, and as you get money allocated to the counties, you're going to ensure that counties that are far behind get some sort of what's the word? That the balancing.
It is called affirmative action.
Affirmative action, right? So they get affirmative action, and that is the spirit of the constitution and devolution. Affirmative action. That's why we even have the equalization fund. It's part of affirmative action.
And these are good.
So the argument now is, if we look at a formula that then shifts the balance in terms of the allocation, it's going against the affirmative action, which is what now and that's why I keep arguing that the framing of this conversation is wrong. Because if we go back to what the CRA, the experts, and I keep saying the experts at CRA have done, and they've looked at formula number 1, formula number 2,
and
they
they've
go
been
to
doing
counties,
it from
they
inception.
audit, they look at the development. They have come up with a new thinking, and they say now, so far we have reached this
This is
point.
what we've been doing.
Our new thinking then should look at others. We should now particularly say that funding shall follow functions.
Let's focus on this
Yes.
other. Yes.
If funding follows functions, then even the marginalized will still continue getting sufficient money for their functions. But once that thing starts getting tinkered with, and the politicians come up with the issue of one man, one vote, whatever,
Marginalization.
it comes in,
101.
back in.
Yes.
1963.
comes back,
Reliving of the past once
No,
again.
no, not just reliving it, staying there.
staying there, keeping us right there and not wanting to move, which is why I fault again the CRA for keeping quiet for so long. Sitting back and expecting that, what, we've done our job. We are a constitutional commission. We don't play in politics. You come up with a formula like this and you do not go ahead and explain yourself. You don't go ahead and bring in everybody around a round table and tell them this is our thinking and this is how it's going to benefit all of us. It is bound to be taken over by politicians. Then there's the other issue of another headline in the today's Nation, which I want to argue against as well. This is right there on the front page. 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a quick break and then we come back into this conversation. Good morning.
You are tuned in to Nairobi's #1 soul station, Spice FM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
So, City, the headline is right
Mornings.
there on the front page of the Nation. I'm sure you'll see it.
I'm seeing.
Which
I'm
one?
I'm actually looking at it. Thousands of county staff yet to get June salaries. Essentially, they are saying that the counties have been starved of cash. They don't have money.
As a result of this standoff in the Senate. That's what the story
No,
says.
but that's not true. Are we saying, therefore, that last week when we were told that the Treasury actually released funds, that was merely a report and money was not released for this very same purpose?
Well, I mean, according to them, they say that the stalemate has stalled the passage of the county allocation of revenue bill, which, unless passed and signed into law by the president, the devolved units cannot get money.
Not true. Not true at all. I mean, at all.
And this is something that has been said over and over and over again.
It's like someone wants to make sure that this thing becomes the leading narrative
Exactly.
and that anything else, therefore,
Point back to that and say, well, we're not able to do this
Because Senate
has not decided on the way forward. We can't do this because Senate. Whereas there are provisions for when there is a stalemate like this. There are provisions for which you can get up to 50% of what you would need in terms of budget for you to be able to get the work done.
this narrative has
We
really
know
been
this.
pushed, hasn't it?
I think it's important to let out
it's
the
really, really,
information.
really being pushed. And I remember actually even last week, just before they again adjourned, the former Deputy Speaker of the Senate, Professor Kithure Kindiki, stood up and said, I'd like to just make this statement very clear to our colleagues in the media. Please, whatever is happening now does not have any relations to starving of money to the counties.
Clear.
The counties still have access to at least 50% of the 316.5 billion shillings. They have access to that. Now, the controller of budget, who is the one who allows you to draw money, has also come up with the modalities
That's
with
true.
which counties
Yes.
can actually get the money. Now, if the counties are not following what the controller of budget has done, because even this story says one of those counties, Baringo, has not been able to access any money because they have not met the criteria set by the controller of budget, blame your county officers. When you say that a county has not been able to pay the June and July salary,
And yet the money is available.
it is there. It is available. You can access this money. So this conversation should be had between the National Treasury and the
County
counties.
governments, that's very true.
This one doesn't go to the Senate.
No, it doesn't. It has actually, we can very well say that this cash crunch that they're talking about has absolutely nothing to do with the deliberations that are going on in Senate. Absolutely nothing. Okay, so You'd think you didn't have to say it, but look, Americans drank bleach and then they went on to ingest sanitizer. You think that you wouldn't have to say it, but CS Mutahi Kagwe is warning that doctors should not cook tests. Medics are giving negative results to those who die of COVID-19 to afford them normal burials, according to the CS. The government has warned that unscrupulous doctors in private practice who are said to be colluding with families to hide test results for COVID-19 victims to clear them for burial without observing health restrictions. The shocking revelations, according to Health Cabinet Secretary Mr. Mutahi Kagwe, has come into the medical fraternity itself, where other doctors have exposed their colleagues engaging in the obvious malpractice. It has emerged that some families convinced doctors to issue COVID-19 negative certificates for their kin who die of the disease. This way, they're able to accord their loved ones the usual burial rites. This, according to the CS, is to evade the stigmatization that accompanies COVID-19 burials, terming it unethical and an act that will carry deadly consequences. The CS said doctors engaging in these practices were exposing other people to COVID-19.
So, your kin dies, and because you do not want the stigmatization of people coming in hazmat suits for the burial and all that, you basically ask a doctor, just give us a negative.
You ask the doctor to doctor the results.
Yeah.
Why are you people simplifying it? You don't just ask. You speak to the doctor.
You persuade. You see the doctor.
Thank you.
There
You
you go.
see him. Or her.
Or her. Yep.
This thing is about talking.
It's about talking.
Hii mambo ni kuongea.
Hii mambo ni kusikizana.
Kusikizana. But, this is rather...
I know, right? Isn't it? Like I said, you would think that you wouldn't have to say something like this, but voila, here we are talking about it. And by the time that it has come,
But think about it, Ndu.
at the podium,
Think about it.
it's not one or two cases, right?
Think about it.
Might be a
Ndu.
number.
Think about it, right? So a member of your family dies, and, well, they died for whatever other reason, right? And then they test post-mortem positive for COVID-19. And then now you know what that means. That means that you have to bring in the people from the health ministry to come and conduct the burial. You have to do it within 48 hours. You have to do all those things. It shifts your thinking completely. So if you're able to speak to a doctor and say that we as a family know that this is what has happened, so we are going to take care and just ensure that we are able to plan properly to accord our loved one a decent burial within good timelines. Would you take that option?
It sounds great, even as you've lowered the decibels of your voice
Yeah,
to explain
it's
this.
a sad
That's
sad
all right.
affair. I mean, people have-
However, there's always a however. That you can't be sure. Look, even with the hazmat fellows there, you can't be sure that all safety precautions are being taken. And I think that's where the sounding alarms are coming from.
You know, one of the ways in which you fight stigma is simply making this matter normal. The
Normal.
normalcy is someone dies of COVID, this is how they are buried. Make it normal. But the moment you allow for this secondary issue to come in, you are not reducing stigma, you're increasing,
increasing
it.
it.
Because these actions are brought about by stigma. We don't want to be stigmatized. Yet, if you bury the person and you talk about it and you say, folks, so-and-so died of COVID, and these are the circumstances, it becomes a conversation that people can have.
Because what is one of the antidotes to stigma? It is bringing it out in the open. That's one thing that reduces. Let it see the light of day, and then you remove the stigma. Because guess what? It's unfortunate.
Why are you
would
passing this
think-
burden on to?
No, hold on. You
Of
would think
fighting
that
stigma
you would
on
think
the
that
bereaved.
this conversation would have been had in some kind of privacy, but clearly it was not, because somebody did it and said, "Hey, Eric, I had to sort out my clients the other day," and then Eric goes and says it to somebody else and says it to somebody else. Doesn't it just make it worse? This is the thing. You thought that you were doing this thing in the cover of whatever darkness, right? It comes out eventually.
But remember, there is the question. If you have a dead body, is it infectious?
Yes, it is.
Who says?
Well, according to science, this is the reason why the burials were carried out in the way in which they were carried out.
That
because
was-
the body, though dead,
that was
still
not-
is playing host to the virus. Yeah. still plays host.
It's
for-
still
for-
breathing. They're still droplets.
Essentially, yeah, still playing host to the virus, and this is one of the things that this is the reason why. Do you know I'm right?
Okay, so how is that body transmitting the virus?
I don't know that.
If you had COVID-19 and you just sat there and you're quiet, right? And everybody else is around you.
You're not wrong.
I
in
know
that-
I'm not wrong.
No, no,
I'm not wrong.
no, sister, don't be too happy. You are not wrong insofar as that was the information that we had previously. Remember, with COVID, like with every new disease, new things keep coming up. Information that we currently have, dead bodies are not really infectious.
That has changed now.
It has changed, yes.
But
So
still,
if you
people are
touch-
still being
because you
tested
still need to-
people are still being tested posthumously, and they found to be COVID positive.
Let me ask you, does COVID reside in live tissues or does it just reside
In tissue.
anywhere?
It resides. It
Resides
resides on
anywhere
surfaces.
because
It
surfaces,
resides on surfaces,
yeah.
for
Yes,
example.
exactly.
Yes, it does.
However, but you have to touch that surface.
Yep.
Same with the dead body, you have to touch it.
Yep.
This is the thing.
Yes.
And
but
so now they're saying the people who touch it should actually
Be
be
protected.
protected. Not just anybody can come and touch it, which is the reason why they said
remember-
somebody then who dies from COVID then should be buried in a manner where by anybody who's handling the body should be protected. Still remains.
you know what the problem, I think, if you ask me, with COVID and the spread? Remember when summer beckoned in Europe? You saw the crowding in the beaches.
Yeah.
When you come to funerals, you have similar crowding. That's what the real problem is. Not from this one individual who unfortunately has passed away and we're discussing whether they are COVID-free, COVID-infected, COVID droplets. It is the masses who will come to funerals. That's where the real problem is.
The issue is everybody else.
That's really, that's where the problem actually is. And why do you think
So,
we're
so,
limiting
so,
numbers?
so
Why were
if
we
somebody,
saying 15?
if
Why were-
somebody died of COVID, right, and you guaranteed that you're only going to have 2 people at the funeral, you don't need to wear hazmat suits.
You don't need to wear hazmat suits.
The mortuary attendants don't need to wear hazmat suits.
because if that is
when
the
they're
case,
treating the body.
Yeah, if that's the case, then you can have, like you say, 5 people maximum, including those who are attending to the body, and they shouldn't have to be protected if the body is no longer.
If you want to take this argument to its logical conclusion, and then let's bring in the issue of the ABC of safety precautions, social distancing, what. That's the thing that is not there in funerals. You don't even. It is the issue. I'm repeating it. It's not as though the other precautions should not be taken, but the real issue, what now becomes a public health issue and concern, is what we know is the practice.
Because
at
people will
funerals.
offer each other a shoulder to cry on, because
course.
people will be crying at
Of
the funeral.
course,
yes.
But if you were to ensure, for example, that the funeral is being conducted in other ways, the person is taken and the person is laid there, and all of you are sitting far apart, and then there is cremation that happens. You want to say that we don't need all these PPEs.
I would argue that perhaps we don't. Why don't we look at something happy like, say, a wedding? Okay? Numbers have been limited. Church services, they've been limited. If you have maintained the social distance, do you need to cover
wear-
a face mask? You see, again, I'm raising this issue because as with other things, this matter of COVID, we must continue discussing it because new things keep coming up.
Keeps
and
changing, eh?
Yes.
And unfortunately, it also adds down to the confusion.
It does.
Mara today, Mara
Unfortunately,
today
it
is you carry, Mara wear
One
PPE,
thing
Mara
today,
tomorrow
one
don't
thing
wear
tomorrow.
PPE, Mara the body is infecting, Mara it's not infecting. Hey,
Remember,
and you're telling the entire public. Yesterday we thought,
you
today we don't.
know, when we talk of viruses, what often happens in the minds of most of us, you carry all the information you know about viruses, HIV, Ebola, everything that you know comes into play.
Yeah.
So you don't distinguish.
It's come to the top of the hour. It's now 7 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Shortly, we talk about happiness.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, it's building up in certain parts of the city. If we want to look at Nairobi specifically, we're going to take a look in other parts of the country as well. But for now, taking a look at what is happening on Thika Road coming into the CBD. It's not too crazy at the moment. It is Monday morning, so the likelihood of it getting crazy is actually quite high. But for now, it looks that you'll be able to traverse the streets without too much of an issue. All right, on Mombasa Road, coming out from Mlolongo on the Weybridge, it looks like it's a bit clogged, but it will not take us too long to be able to get out of that sticky mess. Getting to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then out onto Huru Highway should be all right. We're probably going to see more traffic in other congested areas, but we'll let you know about that as it comes in. Let us know also what you see, Spice FM KE on Twitter, so we can help you get out of it as best we can, or give alternates to those who might be stuck. We'll take a look at Jogo Road and other places making traffic headlines in a bit.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM this morning. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Spice FM broadcasts from Nairobi on 94.4. It also broadcasts to Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.7 in Eldoret, 96.0 in Nakuru, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7, and worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke. This show, The Situation Room, also live streams every morning on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we say live stream because it's an audio-visual show and an audio-visual station. We've got cameras in the studio, and therefore you can watch this show. From now until 9 o'clock, we're also live on KTN Home. And we'd like to say a very good morning to our audience on KTN Home. Let's talk about happiness, shall we? Now, happiness is, remember that you keep referring to this CT Muga, about how at some point after the 2002 election in 2003, we were ranked among the happiest people in the world.
Actually, not just ranked. We were called the most optimistic nation on the planet.
Optimism, yes.
Yes.
Most optimistic people in the planet.
Congratulations.
Now, remember, happiness is also something
We're
that has...
referring to Kenya here, my dear, not the continent.
That's why I said congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, to us.
I just wanted to
This was ours.
Oh, well done.
Okay.
It wasn't continental.
It wasn't for everybody. It was just for us as Kenyans. Was us. So we were very happy. Now, when it comes to happiness is something that even has become a global conversation. The UN recognizes happiness and comes up with a happiness index. Remember, we've talked about this many times before. Even countries like the UK have a ministry that's in charge of happiness. So when it comes to Kenya, are we happy or are we not happy? And at what level of happiness are we?
You're asking me about as a Kenyan?
On a level of 1 to 10, where 1 is extremely unhappy and 10 is very happy. Where are you? Where do you lie?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm happy to be alive. 10.
Happy to be alive, 10.
10. On a scale of 1 to 10, am I happy being a Kenyan? 3.
Wow.
Kujivunia kuwa Mkenya, 3.
No, navumilia.
Wow.
Being alive, 10.
10.
Ndu?
Am I happy? Well, this is the thing, because I think certain circumstances make you happy or unhappy. And so I think all of those things need to be taken into consideration when you're asking this question. So yes, I'm going to be scientific about this, because then
You're going to avoid the question. In other words,
Let's listen to this science. Science, please carry on.
because there's certain things that would make you happy today and unhappy tomorrow.
And that's
You
science.
could be, well, look, how do they apply it in the first place? It is because if you want to apply to say, okay, X plus Y equals whatever, right? There's a factor that contributes to your happiness. Remove that factor tomorrow, then your happiness reduces. If that is one that was making you happy today, and if it's not there tomorrow, wouldn't
this
you be less
is
happy?
obvious.
Just take a step backwards, CT. My goodness. Because I mean, if you-
This is what a parent does to a student, to
you imagine?
their child, when the child is trying to explain how they
and the
scored
parent knows that the child is right.
poorly.
The parent knows that the child is right, but it's still refusing to accept. When you go away, Eric.
So, happiness. Are you happy? Do you live in a happy county? Our county track happiness index tells us more. And these are not my words. These are the words of research company Infotrack Research and Consulting that conducted a survey around the country, various counties, each of the 47 counties, and asked the people whether they are happy and their happiness within the counties. And guess what the results showed? That the happiest people were in Makueni County with a happiness index of 64.4%. Then West Pokot with a happiness index of 62.4%. Machakos is third. Bomet is fourth. Kwale also fourth. Sixth is Elgeyo Marakwet County. Marsabit County is seventh. Uasin Gishu seventh. And ninth is Kericho. And the 10th happiest county in the country is Mandera.
May I ask the question? Did this debate take place before the saga in the Senate?
Or after? We need to know, right? For example, when it goes to West Pokot, was it before the landslides
Or the floods?
or the floods, or was it after? To get these answers, let's speak to the person who was in charge of this research. Walter Nyakundi is the research manager at Infotrack Research and Consulting, and he joins us now via our Zoom call. Good morning, Walter.
Morning, Eric. How are you?
Salama kabisa, and thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Walter, we have seen this research and what it shows. So first of all, you say that you went around the country conducting the Kenya's happiest counties. And you're saying here that if you really want to be happy or meet happy people, then you must take a trip to Makueni, West Pokot, Machakos, Bomet, all the way up to Mandera. And it's no mean feat that these counties managed to garner such a high index, as the national average across the 47 counties is 57.3%. And these ones, the top 10, are above 60%. First of all, explain this happiness index. What kind of question would you ask someone so that you can gauge that they're happy or not?
Okay, thank you, Eric. I think I must give some context, first of all. The County Track Happiness Index is part of a larger survey called the County Track Performance Index, which is essentially a survey that we have conducted twice now, the first one being conducted in late 2014, early 2015. And this one was conducted in late 2019 and part of January. It's a survey that seeks to establish the performance of county government with respect to their county functions, or the functions given to them by way of the fourth schedule in the Constitution, as per the perception of the people who live in the county. So there are functional elements which are based on the devolved functions as stipulated in the fourth schedule of the Constitution. But we also take the time during the survey to assess emotional issues, emotive issues, soft issues. That's happiness, optimism, and condition of life. So we conducted the calls telephonically. That is, using our large database, a database that we have garnered over a large period of time. We called about 600 respondents per county, at least 600 respondents per country, across the country, to come up with the index. So with respect to the happiness index itself, it is premised on one very simple question. Taking all things together, how happy would you say you are on a scale of 1 to 10? Where 1 is extremely unhappy and 10 is extremely happy. And from there, we then come up with the index based on the scores given in every county, and then we're able to then rank the counties separately.
So, though, was there any specific, when you say taking all things together, the breakdown of what it is that would make somebody feel that they're happy or not? I mean, would you be able to guide the respondents? Because I think when you ask someone, "Are you happy?" Still like what we asked
Yes.
inside here. I mean,
But more
someone
importantly,
wonders,
Eric, when you
what do
say
you mean
all,
happy?
when you say
All things considered.
All things considered on a particular day.
What
all
are
things
what are
considered
these
over
things?
time?
What comprises all?
The all.
Well, of course, happiness is a very subjective thing. And of course, what the factors that contribute to your happiness or unhappiness are the things that surround you, your social environment, your physical environment, the way you're governed. Of course, are you able to put food on the table? So the all is, is pretty subjective. It is based on, the particular circumstances in your life. So the all things considered is an amalgamation of your physical environment, your social environment. So to that extent, of course, we'd be asking the respondents to basically, just assess where they are at that particular time. It may not be necessarily on that day. It could be cumulative. It could be, based on his or her feeling of, of a large period of time. But the underlying thing there is that it is simply based on the factors in your life that contribute to your state of mind and your happiness.
What are some of these factors, Walter, that you were able to point out from some of the respondents that you got across county? What are some of the factors that people then would base their happiness or unhappiness on?
Well, indeed, of course, there was just that one question on happiness. But we were able to, of course, conduct some follow-up qualitative interviews. And we find that largely, as a developing country, there's a very strong correlation between the happiness of citizens and food security, for instance, peace, infrastructure development, sustainable development, and of course, just the ability for people to work. Of course, you will agree with me that in many instances, especially after the first round of development, the first round of devolution, as it were, from 2013 to 2017, a lot of counties perhaps had not, a lot of county governments perhaps had not gotten the right matrix in terms of governance. But you find that a lot of them that were able to put in place a proper foundation are now reaping those benefits. Makweni, for instance, in the first term, Professor Tibwana had a very big problem in his county assembly. To that extent, when we did the index at that time, indeed Makweni was ranked 43rd. This time Makweni was ranked first. And we can really attribute that to the prevailing, peaceful environment in that area that has now allowed Prof to, initiate his programs, development programs in a conducive environment. So peace is a big thing, and peace should not be taken to mean, physical conflict. It could be just, political peace, as it were. So peace, good security, and critically the aspects of good public participation and good governance. Those are also things that contribute largely to happiness for our citizens.
Okay.
Why is happiness important, really? I mean, if you're talking about a nation and you're talking about the development of a nation, why should happiness be important?
Well, Eric, of course, you know that.
No. This is CT. This is CT Muga, not Eric.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Apologies.
But you can call me Eric if it makes you happy.
It makes you happy, right? Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Well, peace is important. Well, you realize that around the world now, many nations have adopted, are moving away from, just having GDP as a metric of assessing the citizens' well-being, and many of them are adopting, the happiness index. Because what, and I think Eric mentioned it, in places like the UK, once, you're giving people everything they need, once they have all the roads, once they have the National Health Service, why is it, it got to a point where the UK asked themselves, why are people still unhappy? We've given them all these things, yet they're still unhappy. So it behooves any government, any state, to tackle such issues, such as happiness and optimism, and then marry that with development, so that you have, holistically, that you have citizens who are happy, both in terms of the fact that they're able to access government services, in terms of the functional element, but also that they are in the right state of mind, that they are happy and they're healthy. And as you know, in our country, the issue of mental health, for instance, as one that has been for a long time regarded as taboo. It is only now that we're beginning to have a very frank and honest discussion about mental health, as we should be. And so, based on the fact that we are now talking about mental health, it then follows that we should be, be able to come to a place where we are sure that our citizens are happy.
I'm interested to know how exactly this questionnaire would look like, because when it comes to a questionnaire of this nature, we receive very many of these. After every service, you receive a questionnaire asking you, how satisfied were you with our service? And, sometimes you just keep wondering, so what am I going to do? Am I going to put a 10? Am I going to put a 7, a 5? What's the difference between a 5 and an 8? So what would a questionnaire like this, what was the question? And how were you helping the person in their decision-making process?
Okay. As I mentioned, the question of happiness was one question. It was taking all things together. How happy would you say you are on a scale of 1 to 10? The 1 is extremely unhappy and 10 is extremely happy. Now, the 1 to 10 is based on what we call a Likert scale. And then we have, so it's basically a scale rating, and it's analyzed by getting combined frequencies. So that 1 to 10 simply means that 1 and 2 is, between 1 and 4 is unhappy, 5 and 6 was deemed to be average, and 7 to 10 was deemed to be, very happy or extremely happy. Okay? So that is how the Likert scale works. In terms of, prompting the respondent, we didn't prompt, because, we need the respondent to be as honest as possible. Okay. And the respondent should not be in any way, put in a place where they feel they have to answer in a particular way.
So what was the wording of what was the wording of the subsequent questions, so that you'd be able to tell that this person is happy directly because of the management of their county, or they're just happy just because they woke up on the right side of the bed today?
Okay, of course, as you do these surveys many times, it is not that you will ask a question, and for instance, that question of happiness. Once you've asked the question and the person tells you 7, it is unlikely that it will stop there. Anecdotally, there's a lot more that they say. If we're able to share with you, for instance, the recording, that we have, because it is imperative that for quality control purposes, that we record some of the calls sometimes. You realize that Kenyans, as you survey them, there are people who are willing to talk a lot. So there's a lot that they say that you're then able to glean, qualitatively from their anecdotal sentiment. So from there, you do get a sense or a picture or a holistic picture of the things that are, that are concerned to them, and of course of the things that make them happy in this instance.
I'm also trying to think that, once we look at, things from the outside, that you would assume that there's certain things would make someone happy. West Pokot, for example, came second in this study that you did. And if looking from the outside of it, so many things happened in West Pokot. My goodness, from October, there was a landslide, split the county in two, and then they were visited by locusts, and then the floods came, and then so many other things happened after that. We thought COVID wouldn't get to West Pokot, but then it did. So then you would assume, for example, that the folks in West Pokot are actually really burdened mentally and otherwise. So what would be the factors then that would point that they're actually quite satisfied or that they're happy? I mean, with 60+% of the respondents in West Pokot, I mean, above average when it came to happy.
Okay, I reiterate, I must remind you that the survey was conducted late last year. Mm-hmm. I think the landslides were around November, so it's possible that by the time we had surveyed West Pokot, it's possible the landslides have not occurred. That, nonetheless, the county government of West Pokot, both the current one and the preceding one, have done a lot of work, have put in a lot of work, especially in terms of peace efforts, especially with their neighbors, Baringo and Turkana. Mm-hmm. And what this has done essentially has created a conducive environment in which development can take place. Of course, we know that there are things like cattle rustling that have, historical and cultural, antecedents. But what the county government there, what the county government there has been able to do is ensure that these young men, because they are mostly young men who are involved in these practices, given other things to do. There are, gainful employment, business opportunities, so that they're able to move away from, indulging in things like cattle rustling. And of course, just the simple act of devolving services to places that were hitherto, for lack of a better word, marginalized, has really brought a lot of counties into the mainstream of development. So to that extent, places like West Pokot that are now, developing good services, that now have infrastructure, that are now able to come up with very competitive tourism products. It goes without saying that people in these counties will be happy. And I hasten to add that West Pokot has a very, very efficient, very good adult education program, which of course is improving education outcomes in that particular part of our country. And to that extent, it is not a stretch to say that these are the things that are also contributing to happiness.
There are things that you've said, the top drivers for happiness, according to these happy counties, are peace, education, quality and affordable healthcare, food security, infrastructure, equitable development, and good governance. Does this mean that the people who responded to this poll in these counties were ticking all these boxes, whereas the others in the other counties were not? Or how would you be able to glean this kind of information that, for example, peace would be such a big issue for the people of Makueni? You've said Makueni, maybe peace is because of the previous government vis-a-vis this government. West Pokot, maybe the issue of cattle rustling. Machakos, peace. Where does peace come in? Bomet, peace. Elgeyo Marakwet. And then there's the issue as well of education, quality and affordable healthcare, food security. How were you able to glean these as the main drivers for happiness?
Well, of course, this was a quantitative survey, but usually what we do in these instances is that once we have this was a quantitative survey, meaning that it is essentially a survey that is based on numbers. But usually what we do, that once we have this quantitative information, we conduct follow-up in terms of qualitative interviews. So we then, speak to respondents across the country, whether it's in a focus group setting or through key informant interviews, just to get this qualitative information so that we're able to qualify and contextualize the quantitative information. So, Eric, as we did that, all these issues came up. Particularly, certainly in Makueni and Machakos, that previously in days past that had problems with food, for instance. The governors there have worked very hard to ensure that through innovative agricultural processes and irrigation, that these counties are now self-sufficient in terms of food. Peace, as I mentioned, is a big deal in places like, West Pokot, places like Mandera, places like Marsabit. Those peace initiatives in and around those counties, and of course for the northern frontier countries that neighbor countries like Ethiopia and Somalia, those peace efforts have borne fruit. People are now able to conduct business in environments that still have problems every now and then, but are largely safe. And of course, for places like Bomet, Wasingishu, Kericho, these are high agricultural, high yielding places in terms of their agricultural productivity. You cannot understate the contribution of food security to happiness. And of course, just generally across the board, infrastructure, places that are now opening up, we have roads and bridges. All these things have contributed to happiness in different counties.
We're talking about the happiest counties in the country, according to a study that was a report that was released by Infotrack. And we're speaking with Walter Nyabundi. He's a research manager for Infotrack Research and Consulting, explaining to us how they conducted this survey and the kind of responses that they received and how they were able to tell that, for example, Makueni County is the happiest county in the country, followed by West Pokot, then Machakos, Bomet, Kwale, Elgeyo Marakwet, Marsabit, Uasin Gishu, Kericho, Mandera, the top 10 happiest counties in the country. Do you agree with these findings, this research? Maybe you're a member of this, you come from any of these counties. Do you agree? Do you think your county is also among the happiest ones that should be here? Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. You can contribute to this conversation. Let's take a quick break on Spice FM and KTN Home. We want to take a look at weather and traffic. This conversation continues. It's now 26 minutes after 7.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
It's warming up ever so slightly in Nairobi, 14 degrees, and we will see partly cloudy conditions throughout the day. We'll see highs of 26. In Nakuru, 14 degrees as well, and the sun is peeking out behind those clouds. Chance of rain in the afternoon, and we'll see highs then of 27 in Nakuru. And taking a look then into Nyeri, where it's overcast and fog in certain parts of Nyeri town. 14 degrees also, we'll see highs of 26 and a chance of rain also in Nyeri for the afternoon. All right, let's look at other parts of the country. We're in Eldoret. It's sunny conditions at 13 and a bit of a crisp morning. We'll see partly cloudy conditions later then with highs of 24. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy right now. Sunny conditions probably as the sun gets higher in the sky. 16 degrees and we'll see then highs of 27 today. In Kakamega, also sunny conditions at 16. Chance of rain in the afternoon, but not likely. Highs of 27. Taking a look then in the coastal towns, Mombasa, 22 degrees and partly cloudy. We're likely to see this continue for most parts of the day and into a warm afternoon, highs of 30. And taking a step then out of the country where it's partly cloudy in Kampala at 22, we'll see highs of 29. And in Dar es Salaam, we'll see highs of 31 today. Partly cloudy conditions at the moment with a bit of foggy haze through parts of Dar es Salaam. In Johannesburg, it's 7 degrees and a little bit warmer, but we'll see highs of 17 and coming down to a low of 3 today. And sunny conditions throughout the afternoon. Lagos is overcast at 26 degrees. Likelihood of rain later in the afternoon, but we'll see highs of 31 and lows of 17. Okay. Okay, we'll look at other parts of the world and cities making headlines when it comes to weather.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Ice FM.
Okay, it's a little bit messy on Thika Road this morning. If you can avoid the highway and just use the service lanes today, you'll probably be able to get through a lot quicker. The highway still suffering from the dregs of the construction that was taking place on Saturday, Sunday. Hopefully that will sort it out. But it's moving along survey, moving very slowly, but it's moving all the same, so you're not in a bumper-to-bumper situation. Let's look at Jogo Road, where traffic is moving slowly all the way from Hamza to the City Stadium roundabout, and then getting yourself towards industrial area or towards the city centre. It's moving slowly. You need more lanes on that road, that's for sure. Limuru Road coming then into the city is quite foggy today, guys, so you need to be careful. Visibility is quite poor. And then getting into the CBD should be fine from there. Coming off of Mombasa Road and getting then to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, we will see some traffic. We're seeing some heightened traffic around Cabanas. It's likely to build up some more as we go along. Don't forget, you can let us know what you see. We're trying to make it easier to move on this Monday morning. Hope it doesn't get too manic. Spice of MKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
Mellow Spice.
Conversation continues with Walter Nyabundi, who is research manager at Infotrack Research and Consulting. They released a poll result yesterday which shows the happiest counties in the country: Makueni, West Pokot, Machakos, Bomet, Kwale, Elgeyo Marakwet, Marsabit, Uasin Gishu, Kericho, Mandera, in that order from number 1 to number 10. One thing that stands out for me in these counties: Professor Kivutha Kibwana, Makueni; Professor John Lonyangapuo, West Pokot; Dr. Alfred Matua, Machakos; Dr. Hilary Barchok, Bomet, Kwale, go on and on. Is it an indicator of something to you, City?
Well, you know me, I'm still stuck at this happiness issue. And where now I'm coming from is I'm wondering, I understand the direct relationship between happiness and mental health, but the instruments that we use for measuring happiness, are they universal? Are they tweaked to cater for our very specific and very unique circumstances? Because, in all honesty, what would make a person happy, for instance, in West Pokot, and what might make someone in Kwale happy? There may be similarities, but you cannot say that they are identical. By the same token, if someone lives in a major town like Nairobi and someone lives in a smaller town like Nyeri, you cannot say that what would make them happy would be the same thing. There are certain things that join them together, because if you're taking the view that they are Kenyans and they are the Africans, there are certain things that they would form, should we say, the basis of giving them or providing them with that sense of happiness. But when you have such a survey and you make it uniform, what are these unifying factors that you have that then would easily cover everyone and satisfactorily so?
Walter, that's to you.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question, very interesting question. Of course, we are alive to the fact that there are nuances. I had mentioned at the beginning that, of course, happiness is a very subjective thing, and we cannot run away from the regional and locational nuances. But I think what underlies all these things, given that it was a county survey, a survey essentially on the performance of county government, then the underlying factor there is the pollution and the fact that these are all the things. Of course, we are alive to the fact also that in terms of the town, our towns and cities vis-a-vis our rural areas, that we assumed that people perhaps we assumed that people in towns and cities would be happy. What we did find, however, is that our city folks, our big town folks, are extremely unhappy. And this we can put down to a number of things. One is the economic pressures in our big towns and cities, the social pressures, and the wanting physical environment. The congestion, the traffic, the pollution, the noise. Vis-a-vis the fact that in our rural areas, life is a bit more staid, it's a bit more laid back. You're living in a good environment, despite the fact that you might not have, as good as, access to services as city folk. By and large, people in our hamlets, in our villages, appear to be much happier than our big town folk and our city folk.
Can we move things towards where we are now? Because like you said, we understand that this study was done last year, and certain things have changed. And I tend to think that when we view human beings, or we have interaction with human beings, there are certain things that perhaps would make me happy today, and if you were to run into me in a week from now, it's possible that I would not bear the same sentiment that I did when we last met. If you were to look scoped then at how things have changed over the last 6 months, for example, do you think that things would have changed in terms of this index, in terms of people being happy or not?
Well, it's very likely that with all that has happened since March or since the start of the year, that definitely there would be a change in the index. I'll give you an example. Our overall happiness index, according to this survey, for 2019-2020 was 7.3%, vis-a-vis, 67.2% when it was done initially in 2014-2015. That is a period of about 5 years, and in those 5 years, we saw a drop in the mean of 10%. So yes, things like happiness and optimism, all these things are very dynamic. And of course, they are affected by our, the things that are happening around us. So it is very possible, yes, if we did conduct the survey now, that there would be a change.
Because one of the things that you've mentioned repeatedly is peace. That you've looked around, that when this was taking place, that peace was one of the factors or the indicators that then would, mean that an individual or a group or community then were essentially happy. Even as I look at how things has changed, there's still been a relative, amount of peace in the country. Things haven't been, in an uproar. So shouldn't then that transit and say, regardless of whatever is happening with, COVID and floods and other things, that people should generally maintain that if that was one of the factors or indicators that you used then to translate to people's happiness?
Yes, that is true. And I think the events of March 2018 bear witness that after a very divisive, political season, there was a lot of anxiety, there was a lot of tension. We did not know which direction the country was headed in. But after, what happened at Harambee House, that of course, led to a cessation of hostilities and the country was able to, in many respects, move on. And business was opened up, and life returned to normal, as it were. So yes, peace is an important prerequisite for happiness, and I think the results of this survey and the results crystallized by way of county show us that.
Is there a difference, Walter, between happiness and satisfaction?
Slight difference. You may be happy but not satisfied.
So how would a respondent know that what you're asking for is the level of happiness and not the level of satisfaction with their government?
Okay. Yes, that's well. Well, as I mentioned, the question of happiness was just a subset of a larger survey, which interrogated people's perception of their county government and how, in terms of service delivery. So there was a particular set of questions on the satisfaction of citizens with the services delivered by their county government. So to that extent, there was no chance that people might have misconstrued the question on happiness to mean satisfaction with their government in terms of service delivery.
Because we are seeing already some comments. Someone says that Abu Jamal Dennis received a call from Infotrack late last year. The call lasted about 25 minutes on this happiness survey. The questions were many and widely put on basic services, and they enjoyed the encounter from Nyeri County. Is already somebody saying that yes, they participated in the survey, but of course, clearly their county was not among the top 10. So I don't know what you answered, Abu Jamal and the others. Clearly, you are not happy.
But when you talk about happiness, you see, I'm thinking now like an African, and I'm thinking about how intertwined my personal happiness and communal happiness are more or less one and the same thing. You see, at an individual level, if I do well in the goals that I've set, if they're educational goals or work-related goals, I'm happy. But by the same token, the community around me is happy for me. And I'm not talking about my nuclear family. I'm talking about even the wider one. One thing that research has shown continuously, even into this 21st century, is that happiness is very rarely derived from the acquisition of material things. It's in the quality of the relationship that people have with each other. So are we saying, therefore, that the quality of life or the quality of relationship that individuals in these very 10 happy counties is extremely good or better than the relationship that individuals have with each other in other counties?
Well, what I will say for the onset is that, first of all, those 10 counties, the 10 happiest counties are counties that you might call, for lack of a better word, they're largely rural counties, isn't it?
Yep.
And what we must accept, what I think we all agree, is that in many of our rural areas, the sense of community is something that is critical to everyday life. There are strong social bonds in these areas. So indeed, if you read the report, you will see that we indeed did mention, the aspect of cultural pride and social connection being vital, extremely vital to the concept of happiness. So yes, it does follow that in these top 10 counties are the 20 happiest counties, even the 30 happiest counties. But that sense of that camaraderie, that sense of social connection, cultural affinity, is extremely critical in contributing to their happiness.
One of the things that you've said in the report is that not all top-performing counties are doing well in the happiness index, suggesting that county leadership and policymakers at large must marry the functional roles of service delivery with soft issues that cater for emotional well-being of the citizens.
Yes.
I don't understand that. You're saying not all top-performing... What are these top-performing counties then that are not, for example, registering on this happiness index?
Well, I won't mention the counties. As I mentioned, this is a survey. This is part of a much larger survey, and there's a lot that we have not shared, with the public yet. Obviously, in the days ahead, we will be releasing that information. But all we meant to say there is that once you've got the functional elements right, it is very important for you to ensure that you have the emotional well-being of your citizens taken care of. So it is okay to build roads, it is okay to build hospitals, it is okay to have DPD centers. So those are things that you must do because they are given to you by way of the first schedule of the Constitution. All we're saying is that once you have done this thing, ensure that you have a mechanism to ensure that your citizens are happy.
Walter, just coming off of what you've just said now, and then, 4 questions. really, what would surveys like this, when it deals with the softer, more subjective issues, what would such information then help governments, people, countries then be able to do? What exactly, or is in essence, is the use of such information?
When we conceptualized the County Clerk Performance Index in 2014, it was one meant to assess the performance of county government, but very critically, it was meant to be a benchmarking tool. So once you have this information, once you realize that people in Makueni, in Machakos, in West Pokot, Bomet, Kwale are happy, what is it that you as County X can borrow from this county? What is it? What are the best practices that you can observe, that you can be, that you can modify to suit your circumstances, so that you begin to see, better outcomes in your county in terms of whatever performance indicator, whether it's happiness or anything else. So this is essentially a good tool. And research surveys like this are good tools for benchmarking and improving outcomes in other places through best practice.
Whenever such polls emerge, the first thing that people in this country especially will want to ask themselves is, one, who commissioned this survey? And two, how do we trust the results of this survey have not been manipulated to meet some certain political ends? So how would you respond to that?
One, I would say the survey was commissioned and financed completely by Infotrack Research and Consulting. Two, given that it is we who commissioned it and financed it, there was no, political interference. There was no angle. We are not satisfying any political ends or any political agenda. And as a reputable and credible research agency that has been in existence for over 15 years, I think our track record speaks for itself. We organize and we conduct research in a manner that has always been accepted as credible, and our track record speaks for itself.
It's interesting that when you talk about happiness, this is something that it didn't begin yesterday, even before COVID, but now with COVID, universities actually teach this course. One of the universities, the best known universities in the world, one part of the Ivy League, Yale University, has recorded that in its 318-year history, this course, the Science of Well-Being, is by far the most popular course it has actually ever. So a quarter of the students enroll for this course every single year. But now what they've done is they've offered it free online. There's a certain professor of psychology by the name of Laurie Santos who actually teaches this course. It's free online. And why? Because they've realized that when it comes to understanding happiness, there are very many misconceptions around it. What it is that makes you happy, what it is that makes you unhappy. Looking at the dual roles of both sentiments, and then throwing science and research into it and saying what science has found. Now, why do I bring this background? I'm asking the question. If indeed happiness is important in the process of planning and understanding how best to serve your people, why then would you say, I know it's an unfair question, but I'm asking it all the same, why then would you say that our universities haven't taken up this particular challenge and started teaching the science of well-being like other universities in the world?
On the spot there, but yeah, take it.
Yeah, okay. I don't hold brief for any university, but I remember, during my days, my undergrad days, learning sociology. I remember a lot of it was Eurocentric, and a lot of the time it felt that it was, content for a bygone era. But indeed, I do know that education is dynamic. It evolves, and it evolves very quickly, especially in the information age. So all I can say then is, it's just up to our universities to just, take it upon themselves to ensure that they take this issue of happiness and well-being very critically and begin to teach it. And ensure that as much as possible that people enroll for these studies, so that that we have people who are more complete and more holistic in their well-being.
As we come to the conclusion of this morning's talk, Walter, I want to put you back on the spot again. This is a political issue, so it's a political. When you start ranking counties, then the next thing that we will start doing is ranking the personalities. And I had alluded to this earlier, looking at this. Top happiest county, Makueni, Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana. Second happiest, West Pokot, Professor John Lonyangapuo. Third happiest, Machakos, Dr. Alfred Mutua. Fourth, Bomet, Dr. Hilary Berchok. Looking all like that. And then even number 9 is Kericho, Professor Paul Chepkonyi. Did you look at that and then it appeared to you that, if you look at these ones, these are professors and, people with PhD, and therefore maybe the level of education could be determining how they are offering their services to their people?
No, we didn't. This was purely coincidental.
Do you think it's coincidental?
Or to the extent that these
We've got three
counties
professors.
are led by-
We've got 3 professors who are governors in this country, and those 3, 2 are the top 2, and 1 is among the top 10.
Yes. Well, what I'll say from the onset, I think to be a governor in this country, you must have at least a degree. So I know the counties are all our counties are led by very able, very accomplished Kenyans, regardless of the fact that some may not have doctorates and PhD. So to that extent, I think, that was purely coincidental. I wouldn't really make a link between people with the highest level of education and the performance of their countries they're in. Because to get to a point where your country is performing well, whether functionally or in terms of the emotive indicators, there's a team behind you. There's the deputy governor, the executive, the county service board, the civil service as well. So it takes a team effort. So I would not say that there's a correlation between that.
Or maybe we should ask Eric the question. Perhaps these people are just happy despite the fact that their governors have these very eminent qualifications.
Perhaps. Or perhaps the coincidence has something that it's indicating.
If we had said that perhaps these governors are happy because they are very highly qualified, that would be easy to respond to. But how do you attach a people's happiness to the qualifications of their leaders?
To the level of service delivery. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you look at what is making the people happy, it is the level of service delivery that is coming to them. And like Walter is saying, it's not just the level of service delivery, it's the software, not just the hardware, it's the software. So it's the people who really understand and they want to connect to the people. So you probably could see if you look at Professor Kivutha Kibwana and maybe Professor Lonyangapuo and maybe Professor Chepkonyi and maybe Dr. Alfred Mutua and Dr. Hilary Barchok, despite him being a first-time politician, and even the person who was there before him, the late Dr. Laboso, maybe it's an indicator of something.
One thing that education certainly does, it opens your horizons seriously.
Significantly so.
Yes, it does.
Walter, as the last question I think I've got to ask, you talked about 600 respondents in the counties, assuming that you went across 47 counties. So we're looking at just under 30,000 respondents across the country. Is this enough in terms of representation of, 30,000 against 47 million? Is it enough to represent what then the general psyche of Kenyans is?
I said it was at least 600 interviews per county. And yes, that is more than adequate statistically, because the marginal error is such that it gives us very, very accurate results.
Okay.
All right. So, Walter, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us. Walter Nyabundi is the research manager at Infotruck Research and Consulting. Asante sana for speaking to us. And then you are saying that there's more information that you gathered that's going to come out in subsequent reports.
Yes, there is, sir.
It takes you more than 8 months to actually compile this between collection of the information and the release of the report. 8 months. A lot is happening.
Eric, you must appreciate that there's a lot that has happened. And, while it was our wish to perhaps have shared this with the public a bit earlier, you will accept that subsequent events such as the outbreak of the pandemic and a few other things might have interrupted those plans. But the data is there. The data is available, and we'll be sharing it as we go along.
Asante sana, Walter. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7, and live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke, on Spice FM KE, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well as KTN Home. Time for a short break at 4 minutes to 8 o'clock. We'll be back shortly.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
It's 4 minutes to 8 o'clock, and the conversation continues. What do you make of that study?
Well, it's an interesting study. You see, what comes to mind, and why I was raising the issues I was raising is, from a communal perspective, remember, people take pride in their children, in their sons, in the people who come from their community. If your governor is a professor, you take pride in it. If your governor was a leading politician, you take pride in the fact that this is your son. But more importantly, if just read the list of those counties again, please.
The top 10 counties?
The top 10 counties, please, yes.
Makueni, number 1. West Pokot, Machakos, Bomet, Kwale, Elgeyo Marakwet, Marsabit, Wasingishu, Kericho, Mandera.
None of these counties would be counties that you would refer to and say they were highly developed prior. Yes. So if you have a governor who was...
these are hitherto marginalized.
They were hitherto predominantly, yes. So in one way or the other, whether it was climatically, whether it was because of an absence of resources. So if you had a governor who focused on ensuring that the livelihood of the people were definitely improved, any movement made would be huge because they didn't have much to begin with. And they are predominantly rural communities.
Yeah.
So at that point, then, when this question was asked, taking things that had happened historically, at that moment, they could actually be happy.
Or they would be very happy because there are things that they had never encountered, never experienced. They would read about it, probably hear that other people, now they had it. They had reason to rejoice.
That's true. So explain their neighbors. So for instance, Makueni and Machakos, they neighbor Kitui, and Kitui is not among this. Mandera neighbors
leadership,
Wajir, not among this.
Leadership.
Isiolo neighbors Marsabit.
That's what I was agreeing with you. it then comes back to leadership. But remember, this is the first 10. It doesn't mean the others aren't happy.
Yeah. It's just that they're below 60.
They're just not happy first 10.
Yeah.
Yes. Then they may be happy first 20 or first 30. But
even number 35.
There could be certain things that make them happy that are not making the people who came in the first 10 happy.
Okay.
Yes.
Right? But not to the degree that the first 10
for
are
instance,
happy.
if someone was in, say, Kitui...
Even number 47 is still happy.
There
yes,
you go.
Yes,
Just
it's
not
happy.
as happy as number 1.
Precisely, given the indicators that we're talking about. But if you're in Kitui and your minister,
Governor.
one of your one of your leaders had been Minister for Water.
Okay.
And given the way Kenyans function, it meant you had an advantage in receiving products that had to do with water, like pipes and running water and so
dams.
forth. Exactly. So a county that didn't receive it, when they now receive it with the devolution, they're a very happy lot.
They're likely to actually be happy.
Yeah, those ones have already received it. They're not happy with that. They want more.
They want more.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to the top of the hour. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the next hour, let's talk about kazi mtaani, pesa kwa vijana, hopefully. And also we talk about housing. And the housing is one of the big four agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And we've talked about this many times on this show and asking ourselves, so where are we with this big four? With everything else that's happening in the country, where are we on this big four? We'll be speaking with the PS in the State Department of Housing. He'll be joining us shortly. Good morning. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. As we go to the top of the hour, we'll begin the next hour with today's Proverb from CT Muga. But remember, the show is live streaming on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke and KTN Home. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu.
All right, let's see how things may have changed on the roads this morning. We do have a buildup of traffic on Mombasa Road. This is expected. Getting to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout will not be too quick, but we know that the construction that's taking place is also slowing things down just a tad. But you will be fine. It won't be too terrible, we hope. We know that on Thika Road as well, being asked to avoid the highway and use the service lanes if you can, because there is a mashup there this morning. Jogo Road moving slowly, getting to the City Stadium roundabout. Let's take a step out of Nairobi and take a look at what's going on in Mombasa. It's not too bad getting into town, onto Moi Avenue and then out to other parts of the town. Not too terrible either. In Kisumu, as you're trying to traverse Kisumu city, will not be too terrible this morning either. In and out of the city in 10 minutes is what we're being told. Not a problem either. All right, we'll look at other parts of the city when we come back. We'll let you know. Do let us know also what you see. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Keep us informed so we can keep others informed, and we'll keep it a happy Monday.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
This is a show that reflects all the
day.
conversations happening locally, internationally, around the world, and even around the region on Spice FM. Spice FM, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. City Muga, as we begin the new hour, 8 o'clock, what is today's proverb?
Today's proverb, like all our proverbs, are African proverbs. Every once in a while, we spice it by telling you specifically where it comes from. This is an African proverb. I will not specifically tell you where it comes from.
It's from Africa.
It comes from the continent of Africa.
Right.
A wise man never knows all. Only fools know everything.
A wise man never knows all.
No.
Only
fools know everything.
Okay.
Not a good season to be a mjuaji.
So how do you know that someone knows everything?
Well, a lot of our knowledge is expressed in our speaking. There are individuals who will not let you drop a word edgewise. They have to have the last say in everything that is being spoken of, and they have an opinion on everything. Now, those are the people who are often considered to think they know everything. They may not, but they present themselves as though they do. Now, it is such people who are being referred to. But at a different level, all we're saying is everybody has an opinion that matters.
Everybody.
Everybody. That's really what we're trying to say here.
Okay.
You may not think so, but they do.
You don't know everything. Sometimes just also listen to somebody else's perspective.
It's often even wiser to listen, and it is actually more instructive to listen because you then learn. So you add to your store of knowledge if indeed you do have a store of knowledge.
It's true because they say listen and learn. They never say speak and learn.
Okay, let's talk about Kazim Tani. All right. So Kazim Tani, we know what it is. It's a national hygiene program, which is a national initiative designed to cushion the most vulnerable but able-bodied citizens living in informal settlements from the effects and the response strategies of COVID-19 pandemic. Right? So this was one specific. We've been talking about, the government is to cushion, offer social protection. And one of the responses that the government came up with was this one. It said, we're going to have a cash transfer program to the youth, but you don't just want to send money to the youth without engaging them in something and keeping them busy. So one of these initiatives was now what they call the National Hygiene Program, called Kazim Tani. And if you just think about it initially, it sounded like, what the government wants to do is engage the youth in cutting grass and collecting garbage and clearing our sewerage and then paying them something at the end of the day. Of course, when we see the implementation of it in various areas, you see, okay, there are some who are involved in building roads and some who are involved in other civil works around the country. But the issue of how much they receive has also been contentious.
There's the issue of what is slated for them to receive and what they actually receive.
Yes.
Yes.
The gap between what the government has said,
what is documented,
vis-a-vis what they're receiving and when they're receiving it, also becomes an issue. A couple of weeks back, we saw some youth who had barricaded Mombasa Road and they were complaining that they have not been paid. We've also seen, these kind of protests coming from other quarters, other parts of the country, and it's either delayed payment or also how much is somebody receiving. Some of them complaining that they're receiving as low as 900 shillings. And yet, on record, it's more than that. So let's talk to the person who's in charge of this program. And this is the PS for Housing and Urban Development, Charles Hinga. The State Department of Housing is actually the one that is overall in charge of this project. And it's overall the one that's managing this. Let's talk to the PS. Good morning, Bona PS.
Hi, morning, Eric. How are you?
Salama kabisa. And thank you very much for joining us in the Situation Room.
It's a pleasure.
Let's get off from the very beginning. Kazim Tani and what Kazim Tani is meant to be.
Thank you so much, Eric, and good morning to the listeners. If we recall around March when the first cases of COVID hit our shores, the Ministry of Health came up with certain protocols. And if you recall, the first one was we stay at home. Now, that specific protocol had certain impact, especially in the urban areas, because majority of our urban area people, they work in the informal sector, the Juakali sectors, SMEs, and most of them actually they're mainly waged. So they eat actually what they make for the day. The effect of those protocols was that in urban areas there were many families that had to almost make a choice between dying from hunger or dying from COVID. And there was a lot of so many cases of people who went to bed without food. And that's how we decided to come up with a program. So we had different options. We had an option of just identifying these vulnerable people who have fallen back into vulnerability because of the protocols and send them money. But we thought that we can kill several birds with one stone. One is that we put food on the table, and number two, we also get some public good out of it. And this public good was based on the fact that COVID requires high standards of hygiene. And again, the same people that we're talking about when we talk about social distancing, it is not possible to do social distancing in an informal settlement, in a slum like Nakuru. When you go everywhere, they don't have proper garbage disposal. The drainages are either non-existent or wherever they are clogged, and there is a mixture between human waste and all the other waste. So there's so many challenges such that if this pandemic was to break into this informal settlement, then the challenge was going to be much, much bigger. And that's how National Hygiene Program was started.
Mm-hmm. As youth from across the country then began to sign up for this, what was it anybody who basically came in and said, I'm in a position that I can do this work, whether I have lost a job or whether I didn't have one previously? Was there any kind of prohibition for who then was able to come in?
Oh, yes, there was. So we used the Nyumbakumi structures, which the first thing that is important to understand about Nyumbakumi structure is that you're supposed to know your neighbor. And it is at that level, and there was wazees of Nyumbakumi, and it is in those structures where you're able to know that your neighbor did not have food last night because she's what we call those mamafua, and she cannot, no one now is allowing, these ladies who do some of these domestic chores into their homes, and they had no food on the table. So that's how we came up with the Nyumbakumi structures, working with the chiefs, working with the county commissioners to help us identify who are these people that have been greatly affected, especially in the informal settlements.
We have a number of, just as an example, even calls that we've had in here. Now the issues surrounding payments, issues surrounding how all of this, even reduction in fees, the schedule with which these individuals would be paid. And there seem to be some contentious issues now surrounding all of this. Are you aware of exactly what is going on around the country and the problems that some people are having when it comes to, number one, being paid? And unfortunately, some of the corruption that seems to be taking place within this program already.
All right. So the first thing is that the first phase was supposed to be a pilot phase, which we did in 8 counties and 33 informal settlements. Now, at that point, we were paying them in Nairobi. We were paying what is called the minimum wage prescribed by the Labor Act. And it was $650 in places like Nairobi and $616 in other areas. Now, sometimes it's nice to use statistics. Of course, did we have challenges of non-payment? Absolutely. How did those come up? One is we are using mobile money to pay them. Now, we have a deal that we got with Safaricom, where they wrote off the fees on government side and they wrote off the fees on the recipient side. So if it is $650, you're going to get $650. Now, so the first thing that you have to do is that you must have an active mobile money line. But there were several challenges with some of these youths. Number one, they have got some loans with either these loan Shylock, with Fuliza and all those things. And what happens is that if you have a loan and you get paid, it gets deducted.
Right.
So what they did was that they, a few of them, less than 1% actually, they used somebody else's number. Now, that poses several challenges, because if I pay you using somebody else's number, you will come back later and tell me you never paid me, right?
Yeah. So
what we had to do was to pay, first of all, those who had no credential issues. Guess what? In phase 1, that was 99.82%. So you're talking about 0.18% that had these challenges.
Okay.
But then, so for you to overcome that, there is a process, right? There is a process whereby you have got to give us a form that says, I am authorizing you to pay this number.
Okay.
So that later you don't come back and claim those
you're
type
not
of
paid.
issues that you've not been paid. So again, you're talking about a very small percentage. Now, in the first phase, what we saw though was that there was a great need in a place like Madare, for example. On the first day, there was like, I don't know, Nairobi, we had about 12,000 youths who were engaged in phase one. We had over 30,000 young kids just rock up on day one because they wanted work.
Right.
All right. And they started to riot. The other one now was there were some elements of criminality that came in, and some people were arrested actually. And those who were arrested who were burning tires on Mombasa Road actually turned out they were not even members of the Kazi Mtaani. So again, it's the usual shenanigans that come in, right? Come phase two. When phase two then began after the successful rollout of phase one, now we had to go to every county in this country. Now, that is an enormous task. That is almost close to 283,000 young people who are engaged. Now, for you to be able to do that, we had to move away from manual processes now to more automated, just because of the sheer volumes. We needed a place where I can be able to see that you've clocked in and clocked out, because the other time it is every morning you're signing a manual register. And when we get that manual register, that's what we have to process for payment. And on one hand, I've got to make sure that I'm paying the right people. And then on the other hand, I've got to make sure that I pay the young people on time.
Yeah.
So we moved to automation, and there's a clock in and there's a clock out. The second thing that we did with phase two, based actually on the youth themselves, was in Old Town Mombasa and Kisumu and so on and so many places. The young people themselves, because they say that we are our brother's keeper. We want to see how do you expand this program. Some of them even say, look, we're happy to take even 300 shillings a day, all right, so that you can be able to bring more people on board.
Right.
So when His Excellency saw the success of the first phase in the sense that there were a lot more youths engaged, crime rates had come significantly down in these informal settlements. The program was expanded, and we were given 10 billion to run this program for 6.5 months. So we sat down and we said, this is a social protection program rather than an employment program. So we moved from the 650 to 455 shillings across the board. And that's how we managed to get our numbers of 283,000 young. And so then we split them into shifts. Shift one is 11 days. Then you take a pause. Then another group comes in for 11 days. So that, again, we're able to stretch the shilling, bearing in mind what I have just said. The most important part is people need to put food on the table.
So when you talk about this, the kind of challenges that you're going through at the implementation phase, some of them you could call teething problems, and government is very good at using the words teething problems when people's livelihoods are impacted. But also at the same time, I'm just thinking, so 10 billion shillings has been earmarked. It's going to take 6.5 months, and this is a social protection program. But already from statistics of last year's census and all, you already know the number of youth that we have in the country. Already from all other government structures, it's possible for you to have known the number of youth who would have benefited from this program in whatever part of the country. So that period where the youth are telling you, you know what, we are receiving this amount of money, but when we go back home, we are feeling like, we have been favored, and therefore that's why it's maybe the youth are even saying, you know what, I'm willing to take less just so that everybody else can feel participatory in this particular project. That, to me, sounds like a government that was rolling out a program, but it had not thought through the entire process and the impact of it.
That is far from correct, Rick, because first of all, let's do some reality check. When you did the census in 2019, we didn't have COVID. World over, and remember, even the first time when these protocols were put in, we were not told to put face masks. Again, it's a global thing because it caught everybody in the world flat-footed.
Yeah.
And so, in this case, this is not a case of letting the perfect be the enemy of good. This is a process whereby you have got to make decisions, and those decisions, are impacting people every day. Let me give you an example, Eric. There is a lady that I met in Nakuru. This lady, herself and her husband, are in that daily hustle type of work. They have 8 kids, right, and live in a small shack in Nakuru. The lady wakes up every morning and goes to South B. Well, that's where she used to make her daily wages through cleaning in South B.
Right.
They even shut the gate. If you know Golden Gate, Plainsview, they shut the gate.
Yeah.
And they sit outside the whole day waiting for that phone call to come. And when that phone call does not come, she goes back home and sits with the husband, who also works in industrial areas. But we've been told this is not essential service, so stay at home.
Yep.
Their issue was a matter of life and death. Their issue, and in urban areas specifically, because in rural areas, people wouldn't die so much of hunger. But in urban areas, people were facing starvation. Some of the cases that they were saying is, look, we have to do a balloting out of our 8 kids to choose who is going to eat tonight and who is going to go to bed hungry. Yeah. There was a case of a lady in Mombasa who boiled stones. These are real issues, right? So, you can criticize it was not perfect. Did it cover everybody? Absolutely not, because the need was much bigger. But there's a couple of things that are very important in this program. Number one, we also wanted to make sure that the money that these people are getting circulates in their own economy. Why is that important? That is important because we will have just gone and bought unga and start distributing to those homes.
Yep.
But the minute you start also doing that, what do you do to the mamamboga who works in that area? You have also pushed that into vulnerability.
True.
So when you have an economic crisis, the first thing that you need to do is what we call create a consumptive environment. Let the people get some money so that they can spend in their own economy.
Yep.
You, Eric, if I give you money, an extra 10,000 or whatever it is, you probably will go out of town, and these guys spend their money where they live.
Bona P.S., are we to believe that you are offering us money?
Well, not
No?
not you, but
I hear everything that you're saying, Bona P.S., and it makes a lot of sense. And yes, even from the very beginning, that makes a lot of sense in terms of these are vulnerable people, and you're looking at the very many vulnerable people, and the government needs to support them and also support the ecosystem and where they live. However, it comes back to the government knowing how many people are in need, and then therefore the government knowing how much to allocate. Because it sounds to me like the government started with a figure of 10 billion and then said, all right, so go and find the people who are going to get these 10 billion shillings. As opposed to the other way around. X number of people are likely to need this money. How much do we set aside? You'd have seen that maybe you'd have set aside more than 10 billion shillings to 15 or 20 billion.
So Eric, to your point, let's be very clear. Kazi Mtaani is a very specific and targeted intervention. Mm-hmm. It is not the only intervention that government has put in place, right? Now, if you take the tourism sector, they have got their own intervention because there's hemorrhaging in tourism. They are not. I went to Kwale, that entire Diani stretch.
Yep.
Hotels shut down. I went to Mombasa, and the hotel I stayed, it was me and my assistant in a big 300-bed hotel. What happened to the waiters? What happened to all these young people who made their killing from? There is a program that is targeting the people in the tourism sector. There is another program.
That program, Bona P.S., is actually, was it 2 billion shillings given to the hotel industry to shore up the hotel industry so that it can remain afloat. Now, we know, we've spoken to people in the sector, they haven't received that money yet. So that 2 billion shillings was never going to be able to pay the person who could have serviced you in that big hotel in Diani. That was going to the hotel owner to keep the bit of operation running.
So Eric, I cannot speak for someone else's docket where I don't have facts. So I think the fair thing to do is that you'll have to call the either the minister or the PS concerned, so that they can be able to give you the actual specific. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have a specific intervention in the urban areas, and this is what we were targeting. So that is very, very, very important. There are people who today, again, in some of these places, they receive a check. We call them the vulnerables from our social protection program, and we don't have to ask them what they do with their money or to work. That is another program that is there. There is the Inua Jamii program. There is the SME fund, which is being launched by His Excellency himself, where in this financial year, there's 3 billion that has been set up, and to support the SMEs. There is the payroll cut that we have to make, so that we make sure that even those who are employed, the employers, don't fire them. This is a huge program that cannot be sorted out. I mean, a huge challenge that cannot be sorted out by one program. So Kazi Mtaani was very specific to informal settlements, all right, and to young people, and with between 18 and 35, and with the only exception being women, that we gave an exception of the 35 cap, because there was a lot of single ladies and single mothers, single mothers who were having a lot of these challenges. So we made some of those exceptions.
But PS Charles Hinga, the PS in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development, we are speaking with him this morning on the issues of Kazi Mtaani, understanding Kazi Mtaani, the impact that Kazi Mtaani has had in our communities, and especially in addressing the plight of the people who have lost their incomes and they need support, and they're receiving this very crucial support from the government. We'll also, after this short break, move the conversation as well into housing. He's a PS in charge of housing. We know that housing is one of the big four agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta's in this term. We want to understand how far are we on this, and is it still on course? Does it make sense to still keep talking about housing as one of the big four? Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM, also live streaming on KTN Home, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It's 26 minutes after 8.
Still looking at some partly cloudy conditions, overcast in most parts of Nairobi, currently at 14 degrees, and it's likely to be this way. A chance of a sprinkle later on, but we're just going to have to wait and see. 14 degrees and partly cloudy in Nakuru as well. And looking at other parts of the country, in Eldoret, sunny conditions at 14, and that might change later as it becomes cloudy with a chance of rain in the later parts of today. Kisumu is sunny at 18 degrees, going to a high of 26 today, and coming down to a low of 17. Taking a look then into Kakamega, where it's sunny at 17. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 16. All right, in Mombasa, it's partly cloudy conditions at 22, going to a high of 31. And Malindi following in full form with 22, the current conditions, with partly cloudy conditions only for most parts of today. Take a look then into Kampala, where at 21 it's partly cloudy and the chance of rain later on, going to a high of 28. And in Johannesburg, where it's still cool this morning at 7 degrees, highs of 18 and lows of 4. In Lagos, it's still overcast at 26 degrees, and it's going to be that way for most of the morning, going into an afternoon of rain with highs of 32 and lows of 25. All right, let's look at Westlands in the NMA, and it's moving very well on Waiakue. The traffic starts as far back as Uthiru, but it's moving, getting to the 87 and then to the Red Hill bypass, where that's an option to use to get out of Westlands. Or you just want to keep it along all the way to the Westlands roundabout. It's not too painful right now. Looking at Thika Road as well, still parts of the road where there was the construction that took place over the weekend. It's a bit of a clog up, but you'll be able to use the service lanes to be able to get out. The eastern and southern bypasses up and open without much of an issue this morning. Getting to Langata Road or getting to Thika Road via Mombasa Road and vice versa, you should be fine. Jogo Road is moving very slowly, getting to the City Stadium roundabout, and then to enable you get into the CBD, it's also moving. So we don't have any clog ups as yet or as such. On Mombasa Road, however, getting to Uhuru Highway. Uhuru Highway traffic will take you all the way to Westlands this morning as you try to get into the CBD. Get stuck or have an alternate for someone? Let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
So
Spice
we
FM.
still continue the conversation at 29 minutes past 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. On the line with us is PS Charles Hinga. He's the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is the State Department that's actually in charge of rolling out the Kazi Mtaani program. As we understand, Kazi Mtaani program is actually meant to be a social protection program that is sending money directly to the people who are vulnerable and in need, but not just giving them money, but also using this opportunity to keep them engaged, to ensure that we're improving sanitation services in our county, in our country, in our counties, and also to ensure that, and I think there's a very important aspect of it, that bit of ensuring that they are engaged in on a daily basis, especially the youth. The PS says just when they ran the pilot, among the things that they noticed is, one, there was serious reduction in crime rate because the people were gainfully employed. There was good camaraderie and good sense of belonging of the youth in their own country because they were engaged and they were getting paid on a daily basis. And this is why this program was then expanded. 10 billion shillings earmarked for all the counties in the country. This is going to run for 6.5 months. Already the program has, stabilized in terms of the delivery of service. City, you've got a question for the PS.
First, when you hear this, what I wonder is why the government doesn't state more obviously and loudly the things that it does, because this is really commendable. You hear Kazi Mtaani, you see pictures of people sweeping, you think, okay. And yet, this is a very, very comprehensive program. Now, my question is this. Apart from the indicators that the PS has already mentioned, what are the other indicators of success for this program that you anticipate?
Thank you very much for that question. Now, the other thing that has happened, besides the crime rate going down, is that we are able also to assess every time we pay, because of our national government administration sector, we are also able to engage and check the impact on the economic side. So we know that it is actually having an impact on the economics. Second thing is that this phase 2, we said we are going to go into a little bit more sophisticated engagement. For example, the 11 days the young people are not working, we want to train them, we want to equip them for the new opportunities that are coming, which is now how do we sustain this program beyond 6.5 months. So we're training them on how to make roads, either using cobblestones or any other technologies that are out there, right? Mm-hmm. We are also training them on how to build houses or any facilities using stabilized soil blocks. So we have machines all over the country where we are training them. We also have the Ministry of Youth who are also engaging them on on platforms like Ajira and how can they have all these programs for youth empowerment and so on and so forth, so that they can also be able to tap into these things. So it is quite comprehensive, that it is not just slashing grasses. Now, phase 2, we have now moved to what we call legacy type of projects. We're talking about issues like making roads. So if you go to Machakos here in Mua Road, we have got this pack of young people and women who are making a road using cobblestones. fantastic. And because it's labor intensive, as opposed to giving that contract to one contractor, come with one machine and does the road. So we are departing from the contractor-driven type of contracting to what we're calling community-based organization or community contracting. So these are some of the opportunities that we are putting on the table. We are teaching them about urban agriculture. So you go to Lodwar along, River Tuckwell. The young people there are actually practicing urban agriculture so that they can be able to self-provide. We have the Ministry of Forestry, which has moved from just tree planting to tree growing. So a lot of these young people, beyond the 6.5 months, have actually secured, gigs with the likes of the forestry to do the roads there and to start doing tree growing and so on and so forth. So I can go on and on and on and on. We have got young people in Moranga, in other places who are today, one of the biggest challenges in the informal settlement is ablution blocks. So they are being taught how to build toilets and ablution blocks. We have a particular program in Nairobi where we are upgrading all our markets. So this is something that you're going to be engaging the youth again. Uhuru Park, or what do you call it, Jogoo Road Market. Already, if you go there, we have stripped out the asbestos roof. We have replaced them. We are doing roads. We are doing drainage and connecting them to the sewer line and so on and so forth. And this is going to be expanded. So it is very comprehensive.
P.S. I hear all that you're saying, and I see all that is being done right now. And all of this came from what we can see in reality, all of this came about as a result of the pressures then that were put on youth when COVID came into being. But it seems to me that this is something that could actually be permanent in terms of providing employment for young people in the country, and as well as moving along projects that would have stalled for whatever reason. Is there some kind of forward thinking whereby we say that these programs could then have permanency in the country, even after COVID, for example?
Absolutely. And that is what I'm saying is that now for us to be able to do that, we have also got to, we don't want to set them up for failure, because also the public expects that, yes, you're cushioning people, but they also expect, because this is taxpayers' money, they also expect value for money. So it's very important that we equip them, we train them, all right, so that they can be able to take up these opportunities. So that is why we are saying in the 11 days, and this is totally voluntary, so they don't have to, okay, but those who want to, in the 11 days, there is a lot of training that is going on, and you choose what training you want to join. Because and the other thing, it also coincides with the amendments to the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, which now has introduced what we call community contracting. Yeah. So we want to move them into organized groups, and we give them work. There's something I just want to quickly clear, because if left uncleared, and it's still causing a lot of issues. There was a particular case, which for me is a case of poor journalism in Eldoret last week. I'm not going to mention the media because you all know which media it is. And what happened in this case is that actually a journalist was involved in inciting the youth because they're clamoring for headlines. And they distort the truth. And because you know that bad news, there's a saying that says that bad news travels half the world before good news even takes the first step. They distorted the truth. They say that the young people are being paid 90 shillings a day as opposed to the 455. They could have just called us and fact-checked, because what happened in Eldoret, they started late in the program. So they started on Wednesday and they started on Thursday. Now, the way we are paying them is that we are paying the first week, and then we process, as they finish the second week, we start processing the payment. Now, so the first payment that the youth got was for week 1. Now, that payment, those who worked for 2 days, they got 910 shillings, and that is the correct amount they should get. Those who worked for 3 days got 1,365. So to distort the truth, to say that they worked 11 days and now they're being paid 910, and that is how they get their mathematics of 90 shillings and whatever it is mischief.
Was this clear to the recipients, the youth themselves?
Absolutely, and that's why we are saying, if that was the case, there will have been riots in the entire country. So it's a case of incitement, and because this country of ours, we are very democratic, and all the noise that you see is good because we're very democratic. But even with that, there has to be some element of responsibility because if the country burns, it's our country, all right. And if it's burning because some journalist went and just was clamoring for headlines, it's actually unpatriotic in my view.
But let's be fair, Bonapies. I think the journalist must have heard this from a disgruntled youth, which tells you that the person who was raising this issue had not understood. There was an issue of a breakdown in communication between the people who should have communicated to the recipients that this is what happens. If you work for a day, you'll get paid for a day. If you work for 2 days, you get paid for 2 days. And because you've started working today, Thursday, you will therefore receive this much. If this had been clear, then there'd be no issue at all. Nobody to be quoted by the so-called uncouth journalist.
Okay, fair enough. The only thing, though, that I'm saying is, Eric, always fact check, all right? So you can't take one side of the story, right?
Yeah.
And you don't fact check, all right? So, call us. We'll have explained to you. Then we're not gagging you, all right? You can still decide that your explanation is not good enough, and I'm going to publish my headlines of 90 shillings, money has been stolen, and so on and so forth. So for us to be able to, and the histories of this type of programs. We had NYS, we had those things we call Kazi kwa Vijana, Pesa kwa type of things. And when people hear 10 billion shillings, and then they hear this type of shenanigans are going on, it makes our work a total nightmare because we have put so many measures to ensure that this money is not going to be touched.
Yeah.
Right? So
fair enough.
And I'm not go and praise us. Do what you're doing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Work should have been done by both sides. I think that is very clear. Work should have been done by the journalists and the editors, and also work should have been done by the people who are running the program. I want to ask the question about the 10 billion shillings stimulus package, because this is what you're running right now. And then you've also talked about the other elements of this project. There's a training aspect. There's the administrative aspect. There's the issue of, for example, of Moore Road that's being constructed and they're using cobblestones. Is this the same money that is doing everything? Or are you saying, for example, in the case of Moore, that the cobblestones and the rest are being bought by other money and the 10 billion is only going to pay the workers?
Very good question. The 10 billion is going towards wages. Now, we know, I'll give you an example, because in my state department, we are also in charge of all these urban institutions that we have set up. So we have just set up 59 municipalities. About 3 weeks ago, we transferred 9 billion to these municipalities. We're telling them, rethink, because yes, last year when you did the budget and your projection, you are going to do a road and you're going to get a contractor to come and do that. We're saying rethink it, rethink how you're going, because this 9 billion, you can complement it with this labor. We train the young people. Yes, maybe your timelines, because if of course you're digging, using djembes and all that, it's going to take a little bit long. But in this case, this is where we are saying it's okay, all right, not to finish as fast as possible, so that we can be able to spread this program and stretch it as far as we can. We have the Ministry of Education, which has got 7.9 billion for preparing for in January or February when the schools open. We need to have extra classrooms. So today, after this call at 11 o'clock, I'm having a meeting with the PS for education, because we're saying your 7.9 billion can be complemented by Kazi Mtaani, because there's these young people that we are training. In Makueni, we've already started. Makueni, we're already doing 60 classrooms using the Kazi Mtaani youth.
Yeah.
And we have trained them, and as I said, we've given them these stabilized soil blocks. So that is essentially, we are looking at the entire government and saying, how do we domicile this program in each and every one's work plan?
So why is the State Department for Housing the one that's spearheading this stimulus package?
Because we are in charge of urban areas. Informal settlements are our responsibility.
Okay.
But it is spearheading a multi-agency agency. So in our teams, we have got the Interior who assisted us with the recruitment. We have got Ministry of Youth who are providing supervisors. We have got the National Treasury. We have got the Infrastructure State Department, which is actually funding half of this program. And that's why we are saying half of it is going to be training the youth to do the road, because 5 billion is coming from the road maintenance and fuel levy.
So now let's talk about housing as one of the big four. We know that from 2017, December, the president says, I have come up with the big four that's going to be like my main legacy projects. One of them is housing. Since then, we saw, for example, the recruitment at high level where PS Charles Hinga was recruited as PS to spearhead this program. And then since then, we've also seen in Nairobi, for example, a number of projects that was started. They're at various phases of completion. Just take us through, first of all, where we are at right now in terms of the big four agenda of housing. We wanted to have, the president wanted to have 500,000 houses constructed by 2022. How many do we have so far?
All right. So before we go to the how many, let me first of all say, because it was well documented. Now, if you're going to do 500,000 homes, you need 1.2 trillion shillings. Now, that 1.2 trillion shillings is not money that was in the budget, and never was this program meant to be funded from the exchequer because we have got a lot of other competing programs that we understand that housing there are people who develop these houses and they're in the private sector. So we had to design a program where the private sector can continue doing what they do, but we shift focus from concentrating on the 3% of the population to the bulk of everybody else. Now, to do that, we had key interventions that we had to make. So, unlike maybe other big four agenda, you cannot just wake up in the morning and start building houses when you have not addressed the issues of land. When you have not addressed the issue, land in Nairobi now is the most expensive in the continent. There is a study that showed last year. You have to address issues of cost of construction. We have an obscenely high cost of construction. When we started this program, even our own ministry, when we did tenders, the cost of construction was somewhere like 70,000 per square meter. You can't have 70,000 per square meter and have affordability in the same sentence. We had too many processes that added another 15 to 20% of cost, procurement, taxes, and whatever that don't make sense, processes that don't make sense, and policies that are in conflict with each other. And then we had the issue of financing, both for the end user and also for the supplier. So you take time because you're addressing a systemic issue.
Yeah.
You cannot address systemic issues by just massaging things on top. You have to go to the bottom of it. Now, in the process, we wanted to create a housing fund. This housing fund was totally misunderstood, and maybe and rightfully so. We didn't explain ourselves. It's a very complex thing to try and break it down to someone is saying you're deducting me, but I might not be able to get a house and so on and so forth. And then we were faced with so many lawsuits. And again, same thing, people go to court and the courts never made any decisions. They just kept on postponing. 1 year down the road, they are postponing. So we decided to vacate the housing fund as a mandatory contribution, and we made it to be voluntary. Now, of course, that has an impact, because if you're trying to mobilize 1.2 trillion shillings and you made it voluntary, then you have now to pace yourself. Having said that, we have come up with an alternative where we have created an institution like Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company. We have gone to our local banks and we have told them, finance the developers to build these houses for 1 million, for 2 million, for 3 million, which is unheard of in this country. And they must be decent houses. But this mortgage refinance company will buy back those units from you, all right, and refinance you to go and build another one. Now, this program has been funded by World Bank and Africa Development Bank, and we have already got the KMRC now is already established. I think there's just one step of their licensing with the CBK, because it is going to be regulated by CBK. Then we have also gone back to the same financial institutions and said, look, you're worried that this Mama Mboga, you think she has lumpy cash flows, and you think that she will at some point default. So what we want to tell you is that should you get to a point where they default and you have to recover the house, government is going to give you an insurance product. At the back of all those things, they've come back now, and I have in writing 338 billion shillings that they have now made available to say anybody who wants a mortgage now, right? Instead of going to the housing fund, come to us. And then if you, as Eric, you go and you get a mortgage from the bank, you can be able to go and approach any of these developers. Now, what that has meant is that you've seen maybe the last 2-3 weeks, almost every week we are advertising. We've already got about 122,000 privately driven housing that have been published and are in different stages of implementation. We have got 28 projects that we advertised in the last couple of weeks all over the country, where now we are inviting investors and saying, it is come build these houses. We have already sorted out the buyers for you, and there are banks that are coming in between, so that you don't have to start thinking of Wanjiko and saying, but Wanjiko will not be able to pay me. So those are the structures that we have put in place. So we are now on an accelerated process, and we believe that with all the challenges that we have faced, that we are going to make some good progress on this particular pillar.
So in terms of viability then of this project, whereby we're looking at a certain number of units or, across board being built in the country by a certain date, it is still alive?
It is still alive. And so one of the things that is there right now, today I can be able to take you and tell you, here is a project coming up. We count all the way to 500, I think, and 16,000 already. Okay, we have already planned them. We already know where they're going to come up, and more are coming. So, for example, last week we finished the evaluation of probably the largest of all of them, which is going to be here in Syokimau. We have got 4,300 acres, and we have got 5 very strong investors who we are going to parcel out that 4,000 acres and do almost 200,000. And it is well served by two railway lines, SGR and meter gauge. There's going to be a highway that is going to be. So this is a massive undertaking. So this is now at the tail end. And this is investors coming to put in their money and piggybacking on all these interventions that we have put in place. So yes, it is moving. It may not have moved with the kind of pace that we wanted because of the challenges that I have mentioned, but it is alive. And by the way, guess what? Because we are facing an economic challenge, one of the best places to invest money, right, is in the construction sector. Why? Because of all the stimulating effect that it has. Look at all the downstream opportunities. 500,000 means that we need 48 million bags of cement. We need 18 tons of steel. It means I need almost 10,000 doors. It means I need 5,000 kgs of nails. When you break down these into small components, and then now we start engaging our own people. Let me give you an example. We have in Park Road, which is our first flagship project that we did, we decided that we are going to get those doors done by our Juakali. And we had 3 associations, Ngong Road, Kamukunji, and Kariobangi, coming together. We gave them an opportunity to do the 8,000 doors. That is almost 170 million that went directly to the Juakali. The effect that we have seen is that now these people formed a company. They formalized on their own without government telling them what to do. They have formed one of the biggest companies which employs about 10,000 people. They've made those doors. And guess what? We're very happy because 55 of them now have already have actually met the threshold to actually own those homes. That is the transformative power of these particular programs. So with all these challenges, we all must wish that these programs succeed because it is not just about 4 walls and a roof. It is also about good economics.
But P.S., from what I hear, would I be correct in saying that what you're referring to is what we sometimes refer to as social housing?
It's both. So we have got social housing. Social housing is targeting people who earn less than 20,000 shillings. And this is mainly in our informal settlements, Kibera, Mukuru, and so on and so forth. So in there, we have got typologies that we have made. And we have reworked our financial engineering so that the person occupying those houses pays the same amount of money they're paying for a shack, but now pays for a decent house with water, with sanitation, and so on and so forth. So when you go to Kibera, we have houses where people are paying 2,500 for a one-roomed house. They're paying 4,500 for a two-roomed house, and they're paying 6,500 for a three-roomed house. And it is what is called tenant purchase scheme. So they pay for 20, 25 years, but it's the same money that they were paying for a barely 4 by 3 square meter one room shack, and that's the transformation. Now that is social housing. It's very targeted. Then you have what we call low cost housing, which is for people earning between 20,000 and 50,000. That's where the majority of the workforce is, because 73% of all our formerly employed people are in that bracket. Again, what type of houses do you want? They can afford something like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, where they can be able to pay 10,000 shillings or 15,000 shillings. Then you go to what is called mortgage gap. And why are we calling the mortgage gap? Because as it is right now, they cannot be able to get a mortgage. The bank will either ask them to put a huge deposit, or they will have to almost spend 60-70% of their disposable income on paying for this house. That's why we are calling them mortgage gap. That is the number between 50,000 to 150,000. Because in Kenya today, the sweet spot to get a mortgage, you must be earning 150,000 shillings. And guess what? That's less than 2% of our formerly employed Kenyans, those who can be able to walk into a bank. And that's why, for a population of 47 million people, we have, since independence, we have less than 25,000 mortgages. It's a systemic failure that we have to fix, and you have to fix all the issues, because if one piece is not working, it won't work.
But Piers, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Piers Charles Hinga is the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development. We've talked about housing, and I think the housing conversation is one that we must revisit so we can look at it in detail and see this is the plan, this is how far the government has gone, and this is where the private sector is playing in, and also how the people can benefit from this program. It sounds wonderful on paper. Now, it comes to the implementation, as usual, in the government, this is where the rubber meets the road. P.S. Charles Hinga, thank you very much for speaking to us. We wish you a very good day.
Thank you so much, Latif, and your crew for having me.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to coming back again. And I hope also you're not just going to talk about these programs. You must register Bomayangu, www.bomayangu.go.ke,
right,
and start a journey as well, so that you can be one of the converted and you speak from one.
So just a quick one. Once someone registers on bomayangu.go.ke,
yes, bomayangu.go.ke, then you can start the process of. There's a whole documentation that you need, but also you can start contributing. So you contribute just based on the size of your pocket. And because, houses take time, it takes 18 to 24 months to put up, because it's a big scheme. Park Road is the smallest, actually, that we have. It's going to take 18 to 24 months to build. You also end up building your own, arsenal of deposits,
right,
so that you can also lower your monthly payments. You can also pay through National Housing Corporation, the housing fund. Their banking details, I'm happy to share them with you once we are done, so that you can also be able to convey them to your listeners too.
We'll do that. Asante sana for speaking to us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much to our KTN Home audience. We thank you very much for joining us. Join us again tomorrow on KTN Home between 7 and 9 o'clock. This conversation, however, continues on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi. We are in Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 Kisumu. We are in Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We'll be back right after this break. To our KTN Home audience, goodbye.
Spice FM, Nyeri.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Right here on Spice FM. We're coming to the top of the hour. City, before you tell us today's proverb, your take on the housing program.
You know, there's a lot to be discussed around this because within that same ambit, there are private developers. You hear of the urban renewal projects within the counties of Mombasa and Nairobi, and all aiming towards the same thing. It's a valiant effort, but with all valiant efforts, I think what I would consider perhaps germane to the discussion is the guarantees that they will actually come to fruition. That is the guarantee that I would look forward to. For the simple reason that housing is a problem within urban areas as well as in some of the peri-urban areas. And this is something that must not be a one-off as a matter of a legacy, but it must be something as a matter of policy. Something that is periodically looked into, periodically ensured that is actually being tended to. And this should be in each and every county in the country.
Indeed.
Yes.
So we're coming to the top of the hour. Just remind us today's proverb.
A wise man never knows all. Only fools know everything.
Every time I hear that, I just, want to laugh.
Yes.
A wise man never knows all. Only
Fools know everything. Yes.
Well, you heard it right here from the man. It's an African proverb. Coming up to the top of the hour, this is The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Stick around. In the next hour, we ask yourself, is Raila Tosha to be president? Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Traffic.
All right, looking really good on Mombasa Road, rather. Getting into the CBD is not too much of a headache today. We're likely to see that it'll pick up in a short while, but it's 9 o'clock and it hasn't been too crazy as yet. All right, let's look at Thika Road, where it was causing some problems trying to get into the CBD. It won't be too terrible now that you can still use the service lanes to be able to get out into the CBD, and that will not be too laborious. Okay, so we had some slow-moving traffic on Jogo Road, some slow-moving traffic also on Langata Road for some reason, but it's all right, guys. It has proven to be a good Monday in terms of traffic. Let's look at it in a short while. If anything does pop out at you, let us know. Spice MKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start
2.5 minutes after 9 o'clock. The conversation continues. This would not be Kenya if a day passes by without some level of politics, top-level politics. Talk about the next general election. Talk about, 2022, and then start mentioning names as if those are the only names to be mentioned in the country. But you have to bring in the name Raila Odinga, you have to bring in the name Uhuru Kenyatta, you have to bring in William Ruto so far, and then the others will also come in. Now, over the weekend, Jubilee Party Vice Chairman David Murathe is quoted to have said that he would endorse the presidency of Raila Odinga in 2022. He says Raila Tosha. In fact, he says Raila is the best suited person to succeed Uhuru Kenyatta in 2022. And this was also supported by COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli, who yesterday said, I have endorsed this proposal. Historically, the person who has suffered for this country is Raila Odinga. I can tell you, if Raila agrees to run, By 10 a.m., he'd be the president of this republic.
By 10 a.m. on that
By
day.
10 a.m. Saa tatu asubuhi. Now he has actually moved it to saa nne. The wording is usually saa tatu asubuhi amechukua. My ninth sense tells me that Raila would have taken over Kenya by 10 a.m. He's a man that Kenya can easily sell both locally and internationally. His international stature will make Kenya grow fast compared to electing someone who is only known in his county. Raila is the only person with supporters across the country. He can be our Nelson Mandela to transform this country politically before handing it over to new leaders. This is what Atwoli has said. This is what Murathe has said. Of course, it goes with what we've seen previously. We've seen Atwoli and Murathe lately reading from the same script. And that script appears to be the one that plays out in the public domain when they say the leadership of the Senate or the leadership members of parliament who are anti this and the other are going to face the music. We actually start hearing music immediately. They stop talking. And those leaders start facing the music. What is this that is being crafted here? The issue of Murathe saying Raila, Atwoli saying Raila, being covered all over, and is I don't want to ask the question whether Raila Toshas, because Raila Tosha is Raila. That's not an issue here nor there. I mean, he qualifies to be president. He can run the country. He has served in various levels of government, in opposition, in cabinet, as prime minister. So really, the question of Raila Tosha, neither here nor there. The question at the back of my mind is, why now? What script? Like I always tell you, I look at things and I see conspiracy. What script is being woven?
But this is politics, surely. If you see conspiracy in a political discussion, wouldn't you say that you're absolutely correct? Correct in seeing conspiracy. There must be reasons behind it, and it's never what is obvious. And the fact that Atwoli and Murathe seem to be reading from the same script appear to be reading from the same script. That script can change. And you can find them saying things that at best can be referred to as the two being at loggerheads. This is politics. For now, it seems to be the thing that is popular and the right thing to say. But the question you're asking is, why would they want to say it? You see, 2022, or the discussions of 2022, should we say toned down a bit? Well, COVID helped tone it down significantly. But it's toned down. It's gone down.
Yeah.
The first thing that this declaration does, it raises the temperatures of 2022 again.
Yeah.
It gets people to remember that there is a general election that's coming up, because that's the thing. We've been very, very the country has been very
focused on saving our lives,
focused on staying alive, has been focused on making sure that you have some kind of livelihood in the next 3 or so months. And if anybody were to whisper the word of politics in your ear, you would do something to akin to spitting in their face at that point, because nobody was really concerned. Nobody has been concerned with that. Legislation itself has been, quietened down by this. Not much has been taking place because people have been trying to not get sick, stay alive, and put food on the table. So once you do something like that, it's kind of like an instant reminder that, okay, guys, there still is an election that's coming out in 2022. I, for one, wouldn't put maximum weight on that statement, because it could be something that, as we see with politics, it could be something that was said today, and then in the next 3 months, something totally different.
Could it be a red herring?
Or
No, I don't think so.
Or
I don't think so.
I really do think that it is a reminder to let you know that, just in case you forgot, there's an election that's coming up. There are people who are
Focus
still
your
very
attention on this personality.
There are people who are interested in being president, and we feel that this is the fight that we're putting out there, and we want to remind you that this is the position that we have taken. I don't see it being much more than a reminder.
But what are they telling? Eric is right. What they're telling Kenyans, and Kenyans don't already know.
Nothing.
There are many Kenyans who feel Raila should be president. So have they joined that bandwagon of people who think Raila should be president?
Yes.
Before they didn't think so.
No. You see, before, Murathe did not think Raila should be president. That's why he did not vote for him. We're assuming, right, that he voted for Uhuru twice. But now he says, I would vote for this man.
Yes, he did. A couple of weeks ago, was it not about 6 weeks ago, the same David Murathe also said something to the effect that, we can disabuse this whole agreement if it's necessary. It's the same guy now.
Murathe says many things.
Exactly my point.
Or should we say many things are attributed to Murathe?
That is exactly my point. So I don't see what excitement should be brought out because he suddenly now is endorsing by word Raila Odinga. Because a few weeks ago, the whole handshake and the whole agreement could have been tossed out the window if we're going to go by the sentiments that he expressed. So in another couple of months, it could be something else.
It is a discussion point. Why it is a discussion point is for two things, for two reasons. One, Murathe comes from central Kenya. He is considered a friend of the president's.
And a kingpin of sorts.
And he is, that's a different discussion. He is also the deputy party leader.
Of Jubilee.
Do they call him chairman? Chairman of
The deputy
of
party
Jubilee.
leader is
Yes.
Ruto.
So what seems to be unstated here is what Kenyans will call a Rudisha Mkono principle. Raila Odinga was known with the Kibaki Tosha statement.
Yep.
Raila Odinga at that particular point in time and even now comes from Luo land and he was endorsing a gentleman from central Kenya called Kibaki. So now a gentleman from central Kenya is more or less doing the same thing. So there is one, the Rudisha Mkono principle. Number two, in keeping with the BBI mantra of trying to ensure that peace, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Kenyans is continued, there is need for them to have, should we say, a common voice.
All right.
So Atuoli, who is a known Raila supporter, and Murathe, who was hitherto not really known as a Raila supporter, he's more of a Uhuru supporter, have joined hands. But if you ask me, they're testing the waters.
This is what they're doing.
Testing the waters.
Atuoli keeps reminding us that he is a life member of KANU. All right? So as all this is happening, KANU chairman Gideon Moi is already organizing the party for the presidential election in 2022. Basically just organizing the party from the grassroots in terms of there's an election that's going to come, and the party called KANU this time wants to field a candidate. It has not done so in the last two elections. This time it wants to field a candidate, and we are therefore preparing ourselves. Shouldn't they be talking to one of their vocal supporters called Francis Atuoli? Or can we assume that Atuoli now is speaking for both?
You know, Atuoli is a politician of no mean repute. He's a serious politician. You don't become a union leader and not be a politician. You have to be a politician. And if you look at Atuoli's track record and the length of time he has been at the helm of KOTU, it tells you that is not a man you take lightly.
Yeah.
Because it isn't as though they just give him the job. Other people want that job, but he's still there.
He's been there for quite a while.
But then Atuoli comes from Western Kenya. And we know Western Kenya in the recent past has been trying very, very hard to try and find a common voice, a common person who can stand and they can sort of like galvanize behind. That has, as we speak now, proved to be still continuously elusive. Because they have wanted to also field their own presidential candidate. Now, what seems clear to me is that Atuoli is definitely a voice you cannot ignore in that part of the world. Or should we say, you ignore that voice at your own peril. But sometimes the politicians, one of the things that is obvious is it's not that they can read the future, but they can tell or they can surmise what might be a winning combination, and they align themselves with it. It's something many politicians do. So it may look like they are making a declaration, whereas all they're doing is, because they probably have information we don't have, they're simply aligning themselves to what they know has been planned and what is being, should we say, worked towards.
Or they're putting their finger in the proverbial bathtub to see then how warm or hot the waters are. For you to see then what is the reaction of a particular statement when you do say that. So then it actually, what it does is that it now cements the position that you're going to take based on what a reaction is or what a perception is based on that thing that you have been able to say.
Or I've got a third one. They are shaping a narrative by ensuring that the conversation rotates around, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga. They are shaping a narrative. And that is telling the people, stop thinking beyond this.
This is what you have.
These are the only choices that you have, right? This is a system that's trying to protect itself by ensuring that all you're thinking of is the leadership of this so-called system. Why would we be talking about Raila now succeeding President Uhuru? Others, same Atwoli saying, you know what, Uhuru is too young. He needs to continue serving in whatever capacity. At the same time, we're talking about BBI and BBI going to bring in everybody across the table. And even if somebody is an opposition leader, then they also have space in parliament. It's a system protecting itself. My third hypothesis.
And it is an extremely valid one. I mean, consider for a single moment, when you hear our politicians who perhaps in a distant past have had a divergent of views suddenly agreeing, what does it portend? Does it mean that they are agreeing now, or does it mean that prior to that, even the divergence that you saw may actually have been play acting? Remember, these are politicians, please remember.
It wouldn't be far removed from reality.
All along, they know their audience very well.
Yes, and they're playing to the gallery. So what do you think they're doing? You see, at the end of the day, they can say all they like, but there's someone called the voter who has to vote.
This is what I'm saying, and it is to those perceptions or those realities that they must play. They realize at some point, you know what, we can say everything that we need to say right now, but at the end of the day, who's going to give us the applause? The people who are watching, right? And that very much needed applause, right, must be fueled by something. Now, I do agree. I think that in a lot of times, you might see a lot of play acting going on. It's not really because they are hell-bent on those views or creed. It is that they want to see then how the people for whom they are seeking that vote will react.
Remember, there were statements, very, very strong sentiments made by certain MPs from the coastal region. And what it amounts to is them saying we need our own vehicle to sort of pursue our own agenda. And I think they should. It's something that people around this country do. Every region has a party that seems to represent their interests, and they should. And every region actually does. But the point is this. Even as you form that party, it is crucial that those who actually vote support you as well. Because otherwise, that party will not get you to that promised land that you are seeking to get to. In fact, it won't take you anywhere. Beyond it being formed, that will be the end of it.
Get them on board.
If the voter is not on board, because it's the voter that ensures that that party has strength, and that the party is an entity, a political entity of might. If the voter doesn't support that particular move, then you'll just join one of the 60 political parties that are registered in this country, and most of whom people don't even know of.
And you'll just be a statistic.
Yes, you will be.
You'll just be doing nothing,
Yes.
in other words.
Yes, exactly. So, bottom line, it is good to make such statements, but the question and what I would like to discuss is, how do you get the voting population to side with you, having made such a statement?
All right. How do you get the voting population to side with you? We'll discuss that. Let's take a quick break, take a look at the weather. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We will also open up the phone lines for you to join the conversation at 9:30. Good morning. It's now 9:15.
Spice up your life.
Still cloudy and overcast conditions in Nairobi
The what?
at 15 degrees. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 12 through the day, and those partly cloudy conditions will continue. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru at 16. A chance of showers later with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Nyeri looks like it'll be a thunderstorm of an afternoon. Highs of 22 and lows of 13. Eldoret is forecasted to have a sprinkle later with highs of 21 and lows of 11. It's currently mostly sunny in Kisumu at 20 degrees. It's likely we'll see that maintained rain for the rest of the day, highs of 28 and lows of 18. Sunny conditions in Kakamega at 19, highs of 24 and lows of 14. It's partly cloudy in Malindi at 26 degrees, we'll see highs of 28 and lows of 23. In Mombasa, it's partly cloudy at 25, we'll see highs of 28 and lows of 22. Let's take a look in Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 21 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19. It's partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 25, we'll see highs of 30 and lows of 21. Johannesburg is giving off those sunny vibes at 7 degrees, we'll see highs of 20 and coming down to a low crisp cool of 4. In Lagos at 24 degrees, it's going to be a wet afternoon, highs of 28 and lows of 22. Let's take a final look into Europe, where it's sunny in Paris at 24. It's a very warm afternoon and high temperature warning of red today, highs of 34 and lows of 23. In London at 20 degrees, it's sunny. We'll see highs again of 34 and lows of 20 as the hot summer months continue. And finally in New York, roundabout to Monday morning at 26 degrees, we'll see highs of 33 and lows of 24 with mostly sunny conditions through this Monday.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Conversation continues. So, CT, how do you get to convince the voter to see it your way?
You know, in countries that have far more developed political systems and parties than ours, the Tosha statement is made by the party. We want so-and-so to be our presidential candidate. That's a Tosha statement. Right?
And the party here being who? The members of the party or the leaders of the party?
Well, here, it is assumed that when a statement of that sort is made, that the people who form that party, who support that party, meaning the voter, will chime in. And why I want this to be a discussion is because in Kenya it doesn't necessarily follow. Because our voting patterns are known. For the longest time, our voting patterns, with the exception of certain parts of the country, have been strictly along tribal lines. Strictly. So, how do you change this? Because you are not going to tell me that Raila's support base has suddenly changed because of the Tosha. His support base is still his support base. And you're not going to, where the problem comes, you're not going to tell me that the support base that Murathe seems to represent will suddenly move because Murathe has said Raila Tosha.
Do you think it would move if Uhuru says Raila Tosha?
That is something that I would like to look into and determine whether it would work or not. Because Western Kenya has shown some of the greatest democracies when it comes to voting for a diversity of parties. So has Central Kenya. Meaning, there's some really very independent perspectives.
Yeah.
The northern part of the country has also demonstrated that you'll find many parties are represented in that same region.
Yeah.
So, you cannot actually say that, yes, this party may be dominant, but to guarantee the domination and the election is guaranteed when they are voting for their own. They'll galvanize and vote. When you want them to vote for now somebody else, that is a different story. A completely different story.
But also that the fact that, like you've just mentioned, if you go to Western, you'll find that the vote is not universally given to one person.
No.
There are various other players that will come in and they'll get a vote.
They will.
And they'll even field their own candidates. Same thing with Nyanza before, let's say, just say before 2002. This is something would happen. You'd find in the last...
True.
92, 97, there were all these parties, and they would get votes, and they would even field candidates.
Yes, they would.
Where Orengo would go and vie as a presidential candidate and assume that he could get votes. Same thing with Central. Very many presidential candidates in an election. It always appears like, oh, you know, this one was, Uhuru was the one for Central. But no. In 2013, for instance, how many presidential candidates came from Mount Kenya? There was Uhuru Kenyatta, Paul Muite, Martha Karua, Peter Kenneth, just to name but a few. There were others.
Oh, there are others who are not well known. True.
Yep.
Like there's some perennial fellows who always stand.
Yep. But you see that it appears like, the majority will go with one, and then we all forget that there were other candidates representing other parties. And even if they ended up getting 10,000 votes, those are 10,000 people
10,000 votes is a lot of votes.
who voted for these other people.
These other people.
Same happens across the country. Northern, you've said. Coast, you've said. It's the same thing. So for me, I see that, and I see that there's hope. Because I want to get away from this shackle of that, we have a tribal kingpin that everybody looks up to. That is the one that we are going to elect just because he represents our tribe.
Before the Kibaki Tosha statement, that held true until it was put to the test. And when it was put to the test, Raila's backyard voted for Kibaki, something that hitherto had been considered
Impossible.
out of the question completely. So all I'm saying is, it brings in that discussion, because what is it that is going to happen that we'll see that change in voting patterns? Because that really is the heart of the matter.
And what is it that people would start voting for? Because if you talk about now those candidates, then people are voting for their own personal interest being represented by this one person who is representing their tribe.
Usually that, you see, there was that understanding that there was safety in that. And the politicians in this country have really promoted that.
Whether it's true or not is something totally different.
Well, when you promote it that way, it becomes a truth that people believe in.
Yeah,
even if there is no fundamental truth in it. But that's what they believe in.
But look at what we've heard in terms of sentiment recently. I mean, even we have people who call here and they say, whereas the belief would be that my interests then would be propelled by somebody who is like me when they're in a position of leadership.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the reality has been for quite a number of people that whether somebody is from your neck of the woods or not, that doesn't now make them actually push for those interests. And that is what has become sour in the mouths of people and are saying, we thought that this individual was the one who was going to come and be our messiah, for example, in our region. It has not happened. And it would then make you think that there would then lie a possibility that I could actually vote for somebody else who is not necessarily where I am from, because the one who is from where I am from has not delivered on the promises.
If you look at the devolution process that we've had in this country, it's going to produce very many wonderful things for the citizens of this country. Forget what we already know. It has also put state on that very statement you're making. It has shown Kenyans that you do not need an outsider to mess you up. Your very own can do that wonderfully well for you.
For you.
Yes.
Chikulacho is in there.
Yes, the very thing that you thought that they wouldn't do, the very thing they will do.
Over and over.
Yes. So, but what we are dealing with is how you change a mindset that has been there from time immemorial. You see, we are assuming that there's a logical process being applied here. It isn't. It's like a faith issue. Too much thinking isn't involved in it. You put belief and then you carry on.
It is not rational.
But
No.
I believe if you're talking about looking for the only way that the way that makes most sense right now is until it actually happens is when you be able to see the reality. How do you change somebody's mind when you see that thing playing out in front of you? We give an example of when fathers never used to send their daughters to school. What made fathers then send their daughters to school? When they saw that daughters could actually go to school and then do well and then help the family later. It was until then that more and more then began to latch onto it.
But there was wind. There were very many other campaigns where people who'd come and tell those fathers, please give your daughter a chance.
Because of what they saw by the first person who actually went ahead and did it.
These societal norms and the changes that come about, these are the signs that a community is actually evolving. All right? Now, politically, our evolution process is being put to test here. How evolved are we? How evolved are we willing to be? Because really that is the question that is being asked here with all these statements that are being made.
Because then you begin to ask yourself, and then people might then start to see the reality that it is possible to put somebody who is not from your neck of the woods in a position of leadership, because it has been proven that it is not necessarily the fact that the person who is from where you are from is the one who's going to do the best for you.
You see, on that note, President Kibaki has been said is someone who actually should be put that final nail to that particular coffin with his presidency, because he had been the hope that would, many people place a lot of hope on him changing that narrative. And that is why people said, look, let's forget this nonsense we've had in the past. Vote for Kibaki. And what followed, and there were some really unfortunate statements that were made by politicians who were close to him. It's like people were then taken back to where they thought they had left.
Yeah. How?
You see, one Mr. John Michuki is reported as having said when he was asked, but I thought you had agreed that this gentleman called Raila should be prime minister. And on record, said, no, listen, there are things, when you want something, there are things you will say and the promises you'll make.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, goodness gracious, must you say it?
Even deeper into the abyss.
Must you say
Must you
it?
say it so openly?
I mean, must you actually say it? Think it by all means if you must think it. The political problems about this cake, remember, is bedeviling us in the Senate. When it comes up, it receives a very, very, very welcomed hand and heart. So people don't even look into the details of asking, okay, what really are we discussing here? And what is the reality here? That question is not asked. So when you talk of the Tosha, those who are going to vote for whoever they've chosen to vote for will vote. Those who will vote for Mudavadi, should he present himself, will vote. If Wetangula wants to be vice as the president, those who will vote for him will vote. If Raila does present himself as a presidential candidate, those who want to vote for him will vote. So when you take that view, then you have to ask, why is it important for Tosha to be declared?
Yeah, why try and shape a narrative now? Who are you trying to influence now? And
what are you trying to set in motion?
What are you trying to set in motion? And why? 9:30, let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then continue this conversation. 0719-012-600. We'd like you to join the conversation, as well as Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
All right, the traffic on Mombasa Road stretches all the way to the SGR stage at Syokimau this morning, and it's moving very, very slowly. That hasn't changed. Well, that has changed in the few minutes that we didn't see that. But that's what we see right now. It's going to take a while to get yourselves to General Motors if you're stuck there. After that, though, it's not too bad. Until you get to about Bellevue, where the construction is going to affect some traffic, and then out towards Nyeri Stadium will not be too bad. That's where we see a gridlock this morning. People who are not compliant with the Matatu rules now, or the public service rules in terms of how many people you're allowed to have in one vehicle at a time, might want to be careful, because there are operations around the city of Nairobi this morning and probably in other parts of the country. Okay, apart from that, we don't see any hold up with traffic. Kasarani Mwiki Road is still being worked on, and that means that there's some traffic there on the Greater Thika Road getting into the CBD. However, it will not be too painful. Officially out of traffic hour now, except for some trouble here and there. Spice FM KE through the day, in case you see anything that stops you.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
So Murathe pitch for Raila against Mr. Storm, and Murathe's statement was supported by Francis Atwoli yesterday, the Kotu Secretary General. And we're asking you what this all means. Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as 0719-012-600. Tony says it will be interesting to know if Murathe and Atwoli have support base, and if they've ever influenced this support base to vote a particular way, and if this can be duplicated in 2022.
That is an interesting statement of fact. You see,
I think it's pretty obvious that Murathe support base, Murathe national support base, let's not talk about it. It's clear. Maybe the other question would be, who is Murathe speaking on behalf of? You see, over the last 7 or so years, Murathe has positioned himself either willingly or factually, or he has been positioned this way as being the political spokesperson of the president. So you'll ask yourself, when you see Murathe speaking, everybody just thinks, this is what Uhuru is thinking.
Is thinking, exactly.
And
that
when you
was
see
the thing.
Atwoli speak like this, you know, well, Atwoli and the kind of public profile that he has.
It can be assumed that somebody somewhere had a conversation, and then this was the outcome of that conversation, and then it was said, all right, now for public release. And when you hear something like that, it would be that is the position that everybody else in that position has.
You see, there's one reality, even as we go about this discussion. The reality is this: the winner-takes-all formula is horrible for this country. Not bad, horrible, and we've seen the consequences of it. And the idea behind the BBI was to try and see if you can't mitigate and present something that would be considered representative. Okay. Now, the moment you start on that particular journey, even prior to this declaration, just think back. There's been a shift, a movement of people within government. Typical of Kenyan government, it's always seen as a reward for some people, as a punishment for some people. Nothing new in that particular agenda. But it also ushers in a change of times. And you can see there's movement. And you can see realignments. And those who take the time to understand and read these things will say, well, remember the other day an MOU was signed by Wiper Party and the government. The other day Kanu signed an MOU or had some agreement, etc., etc. The other day the party leader of ODM had an understanding with. And as a result of it, our politics, or at least the purveyors or those who narrate the events of our politics, always want to present is because this happened, then there was a reward system that then came into play, and those who received the rewards, and they're aligned to the political leaders, so-and-so who's aligned to this party, so-and-so who's aligned to this individual, received this. Now, there is no other party, there is no other workers' union greater than KOTU. So it can't be that Atwoli wants to be president of KOTU. He's already president of KOTU.
It's not an aspiration, it's the reality.
Yeah, but what else does he want? Because it can't be that he's just content to be in KOTU and that. What else does he want? Or what else would he like?
Being the kingmaker. You see, already because of where he sits and the kind of influence that he has presented himself to control, then the next thing that he wants to do is be the one that is the kingmaker. You want a position, you come and talk to me. If I just stand up and say, Tosha, you're Tosha. And therefore you're beholden to me. That is real power.
Let me ask you something. In this country, how many kingmakers have you actually seen who have remained in power for any great length of time?
It doesn't matter.
Why doesn't it matter?
It doesn't matter in terms of where Atwoli is coming from. It doesn't matter because it doesn't mean that he cannot be the first one that stays.
Valid point. The reason why I ask the question is this, Eric. You see, to be a successful kingmaker, it means the question that particular participant in our show indicated, you really do need to have a support base.
You need to influence people.
Yes, you need to be someone who is known to have influence and someone who people listen to. Which means if you call in favors, it'll have a direct result in something that you want. Now, there are people who make wonderful kingmakers and they themselves know that the day they vie for a seat, that'll be the end of it. So they
don't want.
They never move there because kingmakers, by and large, are too powerful to be given a job beyond being kingmaker. That's the thing about being a kingmaker. If you're really powerful and don't... For instance, Raila Odinga right now does not really have any official position within the government.
Yeah.
And you could argue he is a very serious kingmaker.
He's an influencer.
Precisely. Outside the presidency right now, there is nobody who is a greater influencer than himself.
Yep.
And that, if you ask me, has been the fear of most people. That if this man is already this powerful, what happens to him? What happens
if he has the ultimate?
If he then becomes president?
If he has the ultimate power?
Yes. It's a question that many people have asked. And what they fail to see is that we have a constitution right now whom this very man we are speaking of was very instrumental in being party to ensuring was enshrined. The constitution guarantees that we cannot actually go back to a point where we had an imperial presidency. It's not possible.
Unless we start changing it like we're doing now.
You can try.
We can start changing it, start shaping public opinion and saying that this is the best thing. Look at what happened with that presidency. We need to give it a bit more power, a bit more teeth, because this president is getting direct authority from the people.
Eric, people always try.
All those things.
The reason why you have the checks and balances within government is precisely for that reason, because it is known that people will tend towards excesses. And that's why we have separation of powers, so that this particular arm can check the other. And every time we have an issue, or there seems to be a quarrel with the judiciary and the executive and what have you, you've heard me say so many occasions, it is good for our democracy. It shows that we are testing the limits of this constitution of ours, and we're seeing it in operation. It is not about, so it is all a good thing. In terms of, for purpose of democracy, it is a good thing.
It's helping us.
In the absence of it, look around us and look at our neighbors who don't have this sort of vibrancy. You may consider it a nuisance, but it is useful. It's very, very useful.
Yeah, until the one that's trying to claw back their powers
They
actually
always do.
succeeds.
Until they succeed.
Yep. Up to now, there are those that argue that the executive has succeeded in completely humiliating and clawing back the powers of the legislature. With the controls that they have, that the executive presents anything in any of their two assemblies, the Senate or the National Assembly, it gets its way.
It isn't as negative as it sounds in this sense, Erica. I want to go to South Africa, where for the longest time ANC has had a serious majority in parliament. And they can pass anything they want, anytime they want.
Yeah.
Now, the only country, let me correct myself.
One of
One of the countries that I know have ensured that this can never happen is Germany. The way the German political system is structured, you cannot have one single party being overwhelmingly huge. It is structured so that you will always have coalitions. You may actually be even the minority in that particular coalition, but you'll still end up being chancellor. I don't believe the Germans want a repeat of what they saw with Hitler, because that was one leader, powerful party, an orator. Have a system that guarantees everybody participates. That's their form. Now, we seem to be trying to work out ours to try and see how do we become all-inclusive. And whenever there's a debate, people say, but why are you sort of like fighting this thing? Actually, it isn't fighting. It's debating.
It's debating. So that
You
can see
introduce
that,
something new. Surely, it should be questioned.
a solution will come to the surface through the debate.
Yes. But remember, we come from a background where anything that questioned the status quo that as presented by those in power is considered to be negative. Now, this is what we're slowly overcoming. Now, in the same way, if someone says Tosha for his own personal reasons, we will attach all manner of appendages to it. So-and-so might have said this, so-and-so must have thought this. But the truth of the matter is this. Our political situation as it is, we cannot go into 2022 with the same mindset we had in 2013 and 2017. We saw where it took the country in terms of the sentiments, in terms of the heat it generated, in terms of just the negative sentiments it generated. That is something that the country does not need again. It most certainly doesn't.
So what's the difference in mindset? What do you see as a different mindset that we'll go into 2022 with?
I think the difference in mindset that those in leadership seem to be trying to put in place, whether they succeed again is a question of time, is one where people feel that they are not excluded. Remember, this is not... People. And the people I'm referring to here are the political leaders.
Okay. Yeah, it was very important that you clear that. Don't say a system where people feel they're not excluded. Just say a system where those in competition with them feel they are not included.
But Eric, unfortunately, it's not a sentiment that only the leaders have. Even those who follow them have those same sentiments. Yes.
But you see, now the mindset we're talking about is the mindset of the followers.
Look.
Not the mindset of the leaders. The mindset of the leaders seems set on the best way that we're going to have to ensure that we never keep arguing here is let's agree. Get the cake, you get 40% of the cake, give me 5% of the same cake, and we're happy.
Eric, consider that, this is the mindset. At the national level, it plays it becomes a tribal issue. And yet it plays even at the county level, at the sub-county level, at the ward level with clans.
Yep.
It's a mindset we have. It's just upgraded as we move along.
Yep.
You will find, you go to any county, they will tell you this clan is benefiting more than us.
Yeah.
Of course.
The good thing, however, is that at that level, we still haven't seen people who have emerged as the champions of the clan or champions of the sub-tribe, right? Until that point when we get there, then it also will become negative.
Actually, Eric, we're already there.
We are there.
Yes, we're there.
You'll give me the
Has already,
examples. Ed Gitonga is calling in from Nyeri. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, Eric.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, I got to tell you something. Huh? The problem in the system, as CT said, it's the mentality in the public. Because I can tell you this, huh? If only people elected leaders who have done something as per the constitution. For example, before the 2013 general elections, actually, we didn't have senators, governors. We were coming straight from parliament to be a president, right?
Yep.
And I remember Peter Kenneth was vying for MP, and the current president was vying for MP, for presidency, sorry. But I can tell you this for a fact. People weren't looking as Peter Kenneth as the former MP for Gatanga who was done this and this and this. People are just looking as they said in Kikuyu, Rakanega Ito, he's our son. But then, this is the truth, and this is the truth. Huh? If only Kenyans may be elected the president then as per what you've done. Because if you have one wife and you're maintaining her and you're maintaining a family, then we can give you a bigger family.
Yep.
So if you cannot maintain the constituency as far as being an MP is concerned, and then you come to a political rally and ask for my vote for the presidency, honestly, you've not shown any credibility so far. But you see, the problem is people don't look at that. For example, we have the presidential debate, but people watched only the presidential debate just to see if so-and-so is there, so-and-so, Ituetu is there. But they don't listen to what does that person have to bring to the table. Because, the public forgets that, it's like we are being wooed to get into marriage. And when you're being wooed, there's no kuja na maneno matamu. But people forget that completely.
So it's not about marriage. At some point, marriage flies off the window.
Exactly. It flies out the window. And when you let marriage fly out the window, you can't expect not meeting the good ingredients in a cake, and then you still expect a cake. Honestly, you're not going to get the cake.
Thank you, Ed.
Because currently, for example, right now, sorry, Eric, but for example, right now, there is several debates that there is this revenue bill in Senate, right?
Yep.
And it's not going anywhere. Why? Because it doesn't have the political clout. Because they can't agree on something. And that's the problem. Because the problem is, right now, we don't have an official opposition party, an official opposition clause. People who can say, no, this is not going right. 97% of parliament is Jubilee. So 97%, it's either ufanye hivi ama ile committee ambayo uko, you're going to get it. Yeah, utatolewa. That is how, as it. Now, tell me, can you expect a country to really work towards progress if that is the mentality that is there right now?
Ideally, you should, if all of them were thinking for the people, not just for themselves.
For themselves, exactly. And that's the thing. Now, you're talking about kingmakers. There is Atwoli, Murathe, the like, right? And I can tell you this for a fact. They are not aligning themselves because of public interest. They are aligning themselves because they have some interest later on.
There's what they want. There's what's in it for them.
Yes, it's what they want for themselves. Because, for example, Atwoli knows, were it not for Kotu, he wouldn't be, he wouldn't be that popular. He wouldn't be a kingmaker. He wouldn't be a sayer. But because he's got the Kotu help, well, he has to align himself with some political divide so that when it comes to Kotu politics, he's still going to emerge the winner.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you for your contribution. 0719-012-600. Join the conversation as well. It's 13 minutes to 10.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
12 minutes to 10 o'clock. Well, the conversation continues. 0719-012-600. Karaoke in Wakulima Market, Nakuru. Good morning.
Yes, how are you?
We're fine,
morning.
thank you, Karaoke.
Are you all right? It's a long time.
We're well,
Yes.
karaoke.
Thank you. I want to contribute on that debate
Right.
you're having. May I go back to constitutional changes in 2010? Remember, the person who advocated for that constitutional change, or rather for a referendum to have a new constitution, is Raila Odinga. Remember that? Now, my point is, when he was advocating for that, he was having something in mind that this time around, if you can recall, in 2007, what happened? The majority of members of parliament, when he formed the coalition government, remember, he was having the majority. Now, what was the purpose of him coming out with a new constitution where he advocated for the constitutional change where, as a presidential candidate, if you lose, you lose everything. You go back home, you're not in parliament, you're not even in the Senate. What was behind him? Truly, the noise that is coming today in our country today is just because Raila has no place in the arrangement of the government. Don't forget about maybe he has been caught by Uhuru or anybody else now that he is the co-chair, the way the president is saying. But what was the purpose of him advocating a presidential candidate where if he loses, he goes back home? That means he was having something else negative. Now, let's come to this BBI you are talking about. Why is he once again advocating for the changes in the constitution? And if you go to maybe BBI, according to what Lyra is saying, maybe the proposition from this gentleman is that he wanted the biggest share in terms of the sharing of this cake. By this I mean he wants a post that surpasses all the rest of the posts. If at all we are going to have a president and him as a prime minister, that means he needs a seat where he will surpass everybody. He will be at the top of anybody else. He does not want anybody else beyond him. Now, if I give an example, United States, for instance, we have presidential candidates, and when anytime they lose presidential, anybody who is running for president loses, then he's given another chance of being maybe in the House of, in the Senate or in the Senate in most cases. But in our country, they changed the constitution. Yes, it was good. But why did they remove the opposition leader from parliament? Why? Because I think this is where the more noise is coming from. Why is he not advocating for us to have a powerful opposition leader in parliament? Why is he not doing that? Because that's the reason as why in most cases I'm opposed to the BBI, because I don't need, if at all he wants to be at the top of the leadership in this country, then I think he should continue running for president. I think that is just my solution.
Thank you, Karaoke.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. He's raising serious questions here, Karaoke.
No, the points he raises are actually very, very valid questions. You see, true. If I were Karaoke, looking at it, because he has actually mentioned certain things which are in themselves facts. But perhaps, maybe this is where I need to chime in and say, even a powerful political leader has limits. There are things Raila can't do, even if he wants to do them. There are things he can't change, even if he wants to change them.
Yep.
And once a constitution is set in motion, believe me, that constitution will acquire a life of its own. It will go in directions that you may not even have thought it would actually go to. But in terms of political contest, the truth of the matter is that people who go into political contest, especially for the biggest seat in the land, want it to be powerful. Nobody wants to have a position that has no power.
Yeah. You don't want to get in there and,
And people are pushing you around and telling you what to do.
No.
No. Countries that, for instance, have a prime minister who is all powerful or a chancellor also have a president. But the role of the president is very clearly spelled out. Clearly. And the two don't confuse or conflict. And they got to those positions because they went through what we're going through. And they realized at some point, you know something, folks, let's do it this way. Take Switzerland, they have cantons. They rotate the presidency. It's not even an issue. You even know it will be our turn to be president next.
And there's nothing like, all right, maybe just hold on, or there's no debate that takes
You
place.
know, we didn't finish our last.
There was something I was
another
trying
year.
to do. I just need a couple years to be able to complete this, and maybe you can give concessions. No,
You know, the bigger
it's
thing
not,
here.
There's no debate.
The bigger thing here is the level of political maturity of the electorate. Because it doesn't matter. You don't see this person as your canton. You're seeing this person as the president of the republic. And you expect that, this person will leave and then the person from the other side will come and they will continue running the country for the benefit of all of us. And that's the expectation, and that's how they live with those ideals. Look at Nigeria. You had gotten to that point where it was clear, north, south, north, south. What happened in the last couple of elections? There was that whole confusion of, we only served for half the term.
Until now, there's begging and saying 2023, the president must come from South. And those conversations have already started happening.
Yep.
It started happening a couple of years ago where it was clear that somebody's now wanted to bring a debate in and say, okay, well, there's possibility that maybe.
No.
Yeah.
Eric,
South is what is being asked for now.
What you're saying is true, but remember, for those to happen, for what you're saying to happen, there have always been a group of strong people who've decided that their country must go in this direction.
Yep.
So they set this thing in motion.
Yep.
All right? So just like we are now used to this issue of presidential elections, you can get to a point where the people actually understand that, something, this process, you actually don't really need to come from my neck of the woods for this to happen. But the example has to be set, and that process has to move forward. Now,
we've got to live through it.
Yeah, it has to happen. And people must see, okay, it has happened. When it has happened, they'll say, okay, now it can be done again. And but the results must also be positive. Because if the results are negative, then, my friend, we're back to factories.
That's the thing. That's the danger. The danger is that the result, A, will be negative, and B, that the people who are in power at present and who are championing a certain direction to go, they are not doing it for the benefit of the country and its future.
Unfortunately.
They're doing it for themselves.
Individualistic
Yes.
benefits. That's
so they'll
what
come
it
up
is.
with a system, and this system will look very good because it affords them the opportunity to continue enjoying the largesse of government right now as we sit. Because right now, what we have is, what did Karaoke call it? We have a sort of a thingy magic of a government where everybody and their name who has tried to be president in this country right now is enjoying the benefits of state. Kalonzo is enjoying benefits of state. Raila is enjoying benefits of state. Musalia, Wetangula is in Senate. If you look at all of them, those big party leaders, they are all getting something from this particular big cake. And they'd like to create a system that allows them to do that. For me, for now, for future. Now, the problem is that we are the ones, the rest of the Republic is the one that's going to live through this whole experience. And by the time the Republic realizes that this experience is a horrible experience, it is the people themselves who will have suffered. Case in point, Lebanon. The people are complaining. They're not complaining because, this man called Diab, the prime minister, is bad, or the president is... No. They are complaining against the system, and they're all coming together. It doesn't matter. Sunnis, Shia,
on this
Christians,
one, they're united.
They are all on the
Absolutely.
streets.
And who would have thought that right now, there was a disaster that happened less than a week ago. You would have thought that people would have, swallowed a bit of a relax and said, okay, let's try and at least...
Let's mourn first.
Let's mourn. Let's come to reality in terms of what has happened. No, streets now.
But they know what caused it.
Exactly. And they're not letting back and
No.
saying, we need this one. Here's an opportunity to shout even louder than we've been shouting in the last 12 months. To shout even louder so that you understand that we also understand that this explosion that we saw is as a result of a systemic issue. And the only way for us to get rid of it is when we're at
change
ground
the
zero.
system.
And first of all,
Now.
yes, and we start by getting rid of you people.
Yeah.
All of you go.
Yeah. Change the system. So this whole issue even of Prime Minister coming out to say, yeah, what happened? We really need an early election. They are still saying, no, it is not the election. As long as you have an election and the leader of Hezbollah is going to decide who becomes the leader of this country. No.
You know what is actually strange? If you look at our country and you consider the things that we've gone through, one would have hoped that our leaders would have understood that their security and their tenure and the safety that they clamor for is actually embedded in the people. And that if the welfare of these people actually takes precedence, and it is seen to be so, all these things they keep talking about and wanting will actually come to pass. But when you treat your people as a group of individuals who you think will swallow any lie you throw at them, and who will believe any nonsense you tell them, and you keep doing it over and over and over again, and in so cementing in their minds what you think of them, then you have the problem is greater. So even if you come along with something that is genuinely good, no one will believe you.
It will not fly.
You'll have cried wolf far too often.
And that was happened because, like what Eric said a few minutes ago, this could be a red herring. It could be a smokescreen. Because that's now what you have fermented in the minds of people, that anything that then comes out at you could actually be something that stands for something else. And you don't really know the truth.
You don't know where
you are the one who has actually planted in that seed of doubt in these people, because you have done it over and over and over again. And so now when such things are said, and that suddenly kind of seems to take the country by storm, after a minute, it doesn't have strength, does it? Because people will say,
after all,
there's no strength in this one. Let him say
Yeah.
it, because in another few months, he
This
just
is
might
gonna
be saying
change.
something else.
So, coming to the end of the show, your final comments, and then you remind us today's proverb.
When political leaders in this country understand that their livelihood, their lives, and their future are actually intertwined inextricably from the citizens in the voting public, the day they realize that and start working towards the benefit of the people of this country will change for the better. But so long as they think that they can keep lying and throwing words at real problems that require solutions, and they think the public doesn't see it, then it's not that things will not change.
In dogs.
Yep.
All right. Your proverb today was self-explanatory. Just say it again.
A wise man never knows all. Only fools know everything.
Bas. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM today. Continue listening in. Well, join us again tomorrow between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. The Situation Room. Ndu call City Muga and Eric Latif. Have a lovely day. It's 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life